The meeting will now come to order. Let's all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Almond, please call the roll.
President Conley,
Here.
Director Emig,
Here.
Director Hogan,
Here.
Vice President Kindig,
Here.
Director McKinney,
Present.
Director Meese, here. Director Miller, here. Director Whitmer, here. Director Wolverton.
Here.
9 present.
First item of business is the audit report by Boyer and Ritter. We recognize you.
Thank you. I think we're going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation here for you. So good evening. Thank you all for having me here again this year to present the annual audit report. My name is Sinai Zahirovich. I'm here from Boyer and Ritter, the district's auditor. So let's go ahead and dive into it here. Before I go through the results of the audit, I just want to lay a quick foundation, kind of answer maybe some questions that you might have, the why, what, and how of the audit, if you will. First question being, why do we do an audit every year? 2 main reasons. Pennsylvania Department of Education requires it of all school districts throughout the Commonwealth. The second main reason, the federal government also requires a single audit or a compliance audit to be performed anytime an entity spends more than $750,000 of federal money. This past year, the district spent about $4.5 million, so it hit that threshold. What is included in the audit? So it includes all the funds of the district as listed above. Unfortunately, one of them got covered up with the arrow, but the general fund, the food service, capital reserve, student-sponsored activities. These funds present the daily transactions or the daily activity of the district. They match up to the monthly reporting that the board receives from the business office. And then the second part of the financial report is the government-wide financial statements. That's probably only something that you see on an annual basis within this reporting package. That includes the capital assets of the district, your buildings, equipment, those items, as well as any of the long-term liabilities like your bonds and notes payable, pension OPEB liabilities, and other items. And then how do we go about doing the audit? We really break it down into a 3-step process. We plan, we execute, and we report. Planning and execution, this is where we're focusing on the controls, the processes in place related to the financial reporting, and also making sure that the numbers that are going to go into the financial report are accurate by means of performing various testing procedures, such as confirming with outside third parties, reviewing supporting documentation that's maintained in the office, and other various procedures that we perform. Ultimately, we take all that information, all that data that we accumulate throughout those 2 phases, work with the management team to pull together the financial reporting package that's made available to the public for review. So within that financial reporting package, there are 3 independent auditors' reports or audit opinions, which we as the audit firm are responsible for. Those are all the items that are included in that first audit report, the first one being on the audit of the financial statements. Really the most important piece of that is right at the beginning. It's the opinions paragraph. And as you see there on the slide, we have that identified as an unmodified opinion. It's the name that's used throughout all auditing, but it's really a clean opinion. It states that the financial report is stated fairly in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles. It's really the best possible result you can receive from an audit. The other items I'm going to just kind of skip over for today. They're common items that are found every year in the audit report, but again, the most important being that first item, the opinion. The second of the 3 reports that we issue, this one's actually found more towards the back of the financial report, And it basically states that we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the internal controls over financial reporting, and we did not identify any non-compliance within the financial statements. Again, another clean opinion. And then the third and final report that we issued, this one is actually specific to the federal major program that we selected for testing. So each year, kind of on a cyclical basis, we have to select a federal program to test the compliance of. This year actually ended up being two of the programs. It was the Title I funds as well as the IDEA funds that we tested this year. And again, as I have noted on the slide here, we provide an unmodified opinion, basically stating that the district is in compliance with all of the compliance requirements of those two major programs that we tested. A couple of other items included. Again, these are standard language that is required to be provided. It's same information as previous years, but then the last piece of this report is as noted there, the report on the controls over compliance. And again, we're stating here that we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the internal controls related to those programs. So 3 for 3, clean opinions or unmodified opinions. Like I said in the beginning, it's basically what you would expect to see, what you have seen in the past as well. So next slide here is basically a summary of the table of contents, kind of what else is included in the financial statements. It's about 100 pages long. If you don't have the time to look at all of it, I would highly recommend looking at the management's discussion and analysis, as well as the budget and actual reporting, something I think you're familiar with, but that's included in the report as well, both on page 31, which is a summary of the budget to actual of the general fund, and then more detailed information is on pages 79 through 84. Again, that's going to be all information as of June 30th, 2024. After that, rather than list through all those other pages within the report, we've kind of pulled together some of the most salient, most important financial figures for you here in a summary fashion, also providing multiple years of that information. So the first slide here being the general fund. Basically, when you look at this, I would go right to the bottom of it, the ending fund balance. You can see there in the 2024 actual column, about $16.4 million, down roughly about 800,000 from the previous year. That's attributed to the various changes in the revenues and expenses that occurred this past year. Slide after that, the capital reserve fund, basically indicating here there is roughly $7.5 million in cash and investments within the capital reserve fund. Obviously, that's to fund future capital projects that the district is going to need. After that, the food service fund results, nearly a break-even year for the food service, an increase of about $9,000 to the net position this past year. Last but not least, as far as the numbers are concerned, just showing here some of the most significant assets and liabilities of the district. You have your cash and cash equivalents, about $27 million there at the end of June 30th. Bonds and notes payable, that represents the 4 outstanding bond issuances that the district has. Payments of those going out through 2040. Your pension OPEB liabilities determined annually through actuarial evaluations and reported within the statements as required by the standards. That's kind of a quick way to get through the financial statements. A couple of other items that we provide as part of the audit include 2 letters, the management comments letter being one of those, and this is really just identifying some items that the management team should be aware of in the future. That's coming down the pipeline. So just about every year, GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, issues new pronouncements or new standards that pretty much all governmental entities have to comply with. So we're just drawing attention to those couple of items that are coming in the next couple of years. And then the other letter is the required communication letter. I have 4 bullet points here, all positive. Certainly something I want to relay. We did not have any uncorrected misstatements. We did not have any disagreements with management, no significant issues, and no significant difficulties encountered throughout the audit. The team here was very helpful throughout the entire process. They were on point with any request that we had, any question that we had, so certainly appreciate all their efforts throughout that audit process, and that's really a culmination of all the work they do throughout the year. That takes me to the end. Certainly open to any questions here, and if you have any questions after this evening, my contact information is included there. Thank you all.
All right, any questions for Mr. Zaharovich? Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah.
I was nervous about that
That's
before
all
we
right.
started. Okay. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you all.
I'd like to say congratulations to Mrs. Weaver for another clean bill of health for you and your staff. Thank you for what you do, and that's A++, right?
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to thank Mrs. Danner, who does the crux of the audit right now. She did the entire MD&A, so I want to thank her as well for all her help.
Very nice. Let's give them a hand. All right, our next order of business is the public comment period. The board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen but not to debate issues or enter into a question and answer session with the speaker. Public comment must be germane to school district business, and the board values civil and respectful statements and clear and concise communications that help to inform its deliberations. This first period will be a 30-minute period. We will also have a second 30-minute period towards the end of the meeting. The first period, each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. During the second period, you will have 2 minutes to speak. There will be a clock that will be displayed on this screen behind me and the one to your right. And are there is there anybody seeking to make public comment?
Kara Hetrick, I signed in. It doesn't appear to be on the agenda tonight, but I'd like to comment on the superintendent search. This is now January. Dr. Cartwright announced her retirement last May. As a parent, it is ridiculous that we have not hired anyone yet, despite spending almost $20,000. I also don't appreciate having to be a super sleuth and search around on the district website for any updates. The lack of communication or even dialogue about this has been sadly just not great. And hopefully tonight we'll hear some information, so I'm looking forward to some comments from the board. The other comment I have tonight is regarding policy number 011, Principles for Governance and Leadership. The draft on the agenda that was posted yesterday morning somehow changed and then was different today. So, you know, if you want transparency and people to be involved and know what's going on, to have the policy change the day before or the day of a meeting, I'm not sure exactly what time it changed. It just doesn't give everyone a chance to read it. It also makes it almost look like you're trying to hide something. And since I only had a chance to glance at it, my question to the board is, did the whole board give input to this new draft? And was this a group collaboration? And I'm still not sure why we even need a whole new policy, quite honestly. I don't know if that was explained when this first was talked about in November. And I personally did not appreciate that the focus from the very first paragraph no longer says that the focus is our students. Our students should always be the focus. And now it says something about equipping and furnishing the school system, and that sounds like we're just like decorating. Students should be always the focus, and there was also some weird language about the role of the superintendent. I thought that was talked about in November, that wasn't going to be changed, and that looks like it's still on there to be taken out. So hopefully you can provide some insight on that, and especially now when we're trying to attract and keep a superintendent, policies like this one are very important, and wording does matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hetrick. Anyone else?
Hi, Hi, Spring Davidson, I signed in. I wanted to address a couple of things. The first being, as Ms. Hetrick described, policy 011. I know where the language came from for that first sentence. The Dover Area School Board is committed to establishing, equipping, furnishing, and maintaining the school district system with the aim of blah, blah, blah. That came from a 1949 Article 5 language, and it's kind of a 1949-ish thing to say at this point. We're in 2025, not 1949. And this is certainly not the language that the National School Boards Association encourages boards to have. Their language is specifically establish the vision and goals, not decorating, as Kara said, for the public schools in their districts, and they set the standards for performance of schools and superintendents. And I would certainly like to see your focus be there and not on physical plant issues. The other thing I would encourage you to change before doing whatever you're going to do with this is in this section titled Plan Thoughtfully, which ends, well, doesn't end on one page because you don't have a page. The very last bullet says allocate resources to effectively and efficiently support the district and impact student success. I strongly encourage you to change that to and positively impact student success. Everything you do impacts student success. Whether you do that negatively or positively seems to be okay with this policy, and I am not okay with that. If you want to negatively impact student success, please give up your seat on the board. We are hoping to impact it in a positive way for all the kids who go here. The last question I have is actually an odd one, and that has to do with the books that are being retired. There's a book from 2019 that's being retired. I don't know what that's about. Big cats on the first page. And then it looks as though, and I don't know who came up with this list, it looks as though several books talking about dinosaurs are being taken out of circulation, which is fine. They're probably old and need to be taken out. But there were a couple of kind of classics that were being taken out, and I hope we just have newer copies of them in the library, which would be fabulous. One would be Pippi Longstocking. Yes, it was published in 1950, but I know I just bought it for my own grandchildren this year for Christmas, so it's quite a classic. And if it's not, please feel free to tell me why it's a horrible book, because I'm open to that. I thought it was a good book. The Tale of Peter Rabbit and The Tale of Timmy Tiptoes, same thing. They were published. This one was actually only published in 2002, but my grandson and I listened to that often on the way home as we're coming home from school for him. And there's An Alligator Under My Bed, which is an old book. It was published in 1987 by Mercer Mayer, but again, it's a classic as far as I know. And again, I just bought it this year for one of my grandkids for Christmas. And The Story of Ferdinand, which was published in 1938. I have not read that for a long time.
I'm sorry your time is up.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Doug McGurn, I signed in. I'd like to express my disappointment again in the board in voting last month after public comment asked you to reorganize this board's leadership. Board leadership continues to violate policy and abuse our powers. Calling for a private meeting of a staff member after his public comments is inexcusable and abuse of powers, since not all board members were included in this decision. Mr. Benton is a resident and a taxpayer and is entitled to his opinion. President Connolly admitted to editing policy 011 that Mrs. Hetrick mentioned earlier, and it's up for vote tonight. Senior board member Emick pointed out that this violated board policy and is to be done collectively. I emailed the board and Dr. Hawk yesterday requesting removal of this policy revision from tonight's agenda as overreaching and against board policy. I never heard anything back, but apparently the board did modify the policy, which I haven't been able to read yet. Not only that, the edits are inconsistent and contradictory and diminishes the role of the superintendent. a role that this has taken over 6 months to fill with over 4 months on advisement of a professional solicitor. I fear at what cost the solicitor's services are costing us when the public and other board members have made their opinions clear that Dr. Hawk is the most logical and qualified candidate for the position. Yet our leadership continues to ponder and delay, looking for a puppet to serve their own needs and personal agenda and their false promises of transparency. I feel the leadership fails to realize that the district belongs to the superintendent. The board is voted in and not compensated by the district or the Commonwealth. The role of the board is a consultative body to the administration. I'll end as our president chose to do over the last few years, warning him and the leadership of this board that if they continue to harass or act on their own behalf outside the board in a non-collective manner, that litigation will follow for their abuse of power and not upholding the standards and principles that they swore under oath to uphold as public servants of the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Mr. McGurn. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Caitlin Rhodes, and I signed in on the sheet. As a former teacher and now parent and volunteer in the district, I know the impact the superintendent has on our school district. This person has the greatest impact on staff morale, and staff morale directly impacts our students. I'd like to share my concerns about the board superintendent hiring process. There was a statement on the district webpage in a superintendent search update dated 9/20/24 that I will quote now. "We are encouraging all staff and community when those meetings are set up to attend and express their opinions," end quote. When I inquired about the meetings for community to be involved in the search process by sending an email to the entire board, I received the following response. "As of this moment, there are no plans for creating a community forum with the candidates. However, now that all board members are aware of your request, we will discuss your request with our consultant," end quote. When I reached out a second time after not hearing anything else about my request, Tom Templeton was directed to call me by the board. He shared that the statement posted on 9/20/24 about community meetings was a wording mistake on his part. My question to the board is that if Mr. Templeton prepared a statement to be posted on our district website, wouldn't the board have read this statement prior to it being posted? And if so, the board would have been aware that the statement indicated that there would be community meetings. I feel that my concern was pushed off to Mr. Templeton and that the board did not take responsibility for what is ultimately your responsibility. Mr. Templeton was extremely professional and he listened to all of my concerns. He acknowledged them and offered more information on the search process than the board has at any point in this process. I received no further communication from the school board, and this is extremely disappointing, especially since many of you promised transparency in your campaign. Because unfortunately there was no opportunity for community members or parents to meet the candidates you are considering, I'm giving the following opinion based on what I have observed as a parent and volunteer in the district. Dr. Houck has shown up for our kids and staff, improved our curriculum, and continues to do the hard work of successfully running our district, now with many key administrative positions unfilled or filled with new employees. I know that many of our staff feel that Dr. Houck should be our next superintendent. I hope that the board recognizes that we have a highly qualified, respected candidate who knows our district and has proven that she can lead this district in a positive way sitting in this room tonight. I'd also like to take this time to thank the board members who are truly working in the best interest of our kids. I'm in Dover Elementary at least weekly to volunteer in my daughter's classroom, and I can tell you that the staff and the students are working so hard every day and doing their best. We as a community and you as a board member should be doing all we can to support them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Rhodes.
Good evening, Susan Hamburger, Schoolhouse Road. Recently, it's come to my attention that my name was brought up at an executive session in regards to the solar project. And it was stated that Mrs. Hamburger is in favor of this project. I'm here tonight to state unequivocally that I am not in favor of this project. It was also stated that I thought it was a good investment, and I'm here tonight to correct that as well. It may well be a good investment, but what I said was, we don't have the money to invest in anything, especially not $600,000. I'm hoping that in the future, when people are quoted, that the board gets it correct, because it certainly could be construed that words are being twisted to make it sound like, oh yeah, the public is in favor of this, people who come to the meetings are in favor of this, when in reality they are not. I'm hoping that this was just a misquote and was not done purposely. Also, I think that you should hire Dr. Houck and get it over with, because we're spending way too much money on messing around with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hamburger. Anyone else? All right, public comment period is closed. This takes us to the announcement of executive sessions. Since the last fairly comprehensive report on executive sessions was read, I think I might have one meeting or two meetings overlapped here, but we met in executive session to discuss personnel matters, most of this associated with the superintendent search, on November 25th, December 2nd, December 3rd, December 9th, December 12th, December 17th, December 23rd, and January 12th. We have another executive session scheduled at the conclusion of this meeting tonight to discuss personnel matters. All right, this takes us to section number 5. This is section that was added by request of the administration, agenda item 5.01. Normally during the planning meeting we do not vote on issues, but tonight we will be looking to vote on some appointments that are included in the public content of this, and there's also some additional information that the board has under the administrative content. So we will be looking for a motion to approve the appointments of Caitlin Hicks, Judd Piccano, am I pronouncing that correctly? Jennifer Gutzweiler, and Sarah Polizzotto. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Director Emig moves. Director
second.
McKinney seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Almond, please call the vote.
Nine yes.
And the motion carries. I'd like to recognize Dr. Houck on this particular item to explain the reasons for making the request.
Certainly. We have some open positions, and getting them board approved today allows them to be in the classroom starting tomorrow, especially at the high school, where they are starting a new semester. So this will allow those teachers to get started right away. So I appreciate the board approving them ahead of time. The other thing to keep in mind is that if a teacher is already working in another district, it is not wise to enter your resignation prior to being board approved. So that allows both teachers to get started right away and allows them to hand in their resignation at their previous district. So I appreciate that. And I believe Mr. Piccano is here today, so I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate him, welcome, and introduce him to the board.
All right, congratulations. Next item on the agenda, section 6, agenda item 6.01, the Dover Area High School graduation date, May 31st. I'll recognize our superintendent, acting superintendent, Dr. Houck, to explain the reason for this choice.
The graduation date is not on the calendar that is board approved. So when we do choose a graduation date, we have to bring that to the board for approval. So May 31st is the Saturday following the last day of school, which allows our seniors to take their finals and finish up what they need to finish up in order to get all of their credits for graduation.
Any Questions or discussion from the board? All right, agenda item 6.02, the Dover Area High School early graduates list is attached. Any discussion there? Agenda item 6.03, the Dover Area High School course selection guide for 2025 and 2026, I'm sorry, 2025 and 2026. Attached under the public content is the course selection guide, and I'd like to thank the district and recognize them for the list of explanations and the reasons that are also attached there under public comment. Any questions or discussion from the board? All right, the next is a field trip request to high school band students to PMEA District 7 Band at Lampeter Strasburg High School, January 24th through 25th of this year. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, agenda item 6.05, resignations and terminations. 6.06, retirements. 6.07, leaves of absence. 6.08, appointments. 6.09, transfers. Any questions, comments, concerns about any of those items? Agenda item 6.10 is a correction to Amanda Benetham appointment on November 19th, 2024, board agenda as long-term substitute. There was one minor correction, and it is highlighted in yellow on the public content. It changes the grade to 2, that which is the second grade is the correct one. It was a misprint last time. Next is agenda item 6.11, addition to approved driver listing. The drivers are listed under public content. Agenda item 6.12, agreement with Yellow Breeches Education Center. The agreement is attached under public comment. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
I would like just to explain that this is a pending kind of agreement. We are not going to be charged until we have a student that is there. We do anticipate a possibility of having a student enter Yellow Breeches, but at this point, we're just asking the board to agree to allow us to use that facility if a student requires it.
Is this because we're out of seats at River Rock or other schools, or is it just an alternate with a different kind of
Yeah,
format?
no, this is because they offer specialized services that we do not offer here within the district.
Okay.
So if we have a student and the IEP team determines that the student requires those kinds of services, then Yellow Breeches is one of the facilities that we could use if it's most appropriate for them.
Okay.
Did I say that right, Mrs. Snyder?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, the cost per student rate is listed in the agreement at just about $33,000, and there's a purchase transportation option of $22,000 for up to 3 students, and any additional student at right at $7,500. Any questions, comments, concerns there? All right. The next agenda item, 6.13, agreements with West York School District for special education student placements. I'll recognize Dr. Houck.
This is a similar situation. We have some students that we do not have the proper classrooms here within the district, and so we partner with West York because they do have those classrooms. And so our students attend that facility in order to get their least restrictive environment.
Okay, any questions? All right, agenda item 6.14, this will be a good possible opportunity to answer some questions. I'll take 6.14 and 6.15 together. Dr. Houck?
The majority of these books are damaged, or the age of the book is such that they are yellowed, faded, those types of things. We are not necessarily weeding out titles unless it is a book that has been in the library for many, many, many years and kids simply have not checked them out. So that's the majority of them are just yellowed, faded, and often they are replaced with a newer version of the same title.
These are the recommendation of the libraries?
The librarians,
Okay,
yes.
All right. Agenda item 6.16 is uncompensated leave request. Any questions, comments, concerns there? Agenda item 6.17 is tax forgiveness request for the West Shore Wildlife Center, which has relocated to Dover Township. Any questions, comments, concerns there? All right, agenda item 6.18, resolution not to exceed index of the 2025-2026 budget. As a standard annual procedure. Any questions, comments, concerns from the board? All right, next one is agenda item 6.19, tax collector compensation. I'll read the beginning of the public comment section here. Pursuant to section 36A of the local tax collection law, municipalities and school districts have the ability to change tax collector compensation only once every 4 years. Changes are accomplished through the school board resolution. The compensation structure must be in place prior to the 15th day of February of the year of the municipal election. This language means that the resolution must be passed on or before February 14, 2025. This ensures that individuals running for tax collector in the primary election and municipal elections of 2025 have notice of the compensation structure prior to making the decision to run for the 4-year term of office. Attached is the resolution and the tax collector agreement. In the resolution as published are the proposals that we received from the tax collector. So the floor is open for comment.
I don't know how many other board members took a look at the...
I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Okay.
All right.
Took a look at what the proposal was from our tax collector. I think it's important, first off, to remember we're not voting based on our current tax collector. We're voting for the future. We set the rate so that if anybody runs for that office next time when it comes up, they know what their pay will be for those 4 years. Mrs. Weaver sent out to the board comparisons for other districts. You can see we're probably somewhat in the middle. We might be a little low compared to some of the other ones. I reached out to someone that I knew in Central, and we're actually a little above what Central's paying and what Central's looking at their proposal for the next 4 years as we're looking at for our next 4 years. We'd actually be a little above Central if we went, even if we went with a nickel every year as the previous board had done 4 years ago, we'd be above Central. So I think it's something we have to look at. Keep in mind, I went back and looked, York County has a rate that they pay the tax collector. According to their language, it goes up by cost of living every year. Doing a rough calculation, I won't say it's exact, but I came out that they're somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.85, plus or minus. Dover Township, we found out, we were told, pays a flat rate. So they're paying $24.5 at a flat rate. And currently we are right around $28.6. So those are the 3 places where the tax collector is reimbursed for the work they do. I, for one, am hesitant to add 10 cents a year for the next 4 years. again, looking at the county, what other school districts are doing in the county, I think it puts us out of line of where we should be. So next month, we're going to have to vote, or next week, we're going to have to vote on this. So I think it's important that all of us as board members take a look at this and try and come up with what we think is a reasonable fee for what the tax collector in the future will receive.
Okay, so we have Ms. Christine Keener, who's our tax collector for the Dover District, and you're at the podium. So you proposed some annual increases for beginning 25, 26, all the way up through 2029, correct?
Starting in 2026.
2026, right. So do you want to just kind of explain what your rationale was for the proposal that you made?
Well, based on that I collect over $38 million for you. Well, I collect over 38 for everybody, 28 millions for you. That's a huge responsibility. And I always have to tie out, and we just did, to zero, so I never have any issues, and I just think 10 cents isn't unreasonable. I mean, Hanover's up over, what are they? You probably didn't, Hanover's up over 4. I just didn't think 10 cents was unreasonable.
Over for what?
$4 a bill.
Okay, so that would be $2 out, $2 in? Is that the
No,
way
I
they do
think
it?
they're getting,
It's in the calculation that I did send you in the file with regards to, like, if it's bill sent, bill paid, if it's installments.
Okay.
And the 20,000, just so you guys know, is for both Dover Borough and Dover Township, so it's not just for Dover Township, it's for both tax collectors. That's a total salary.
Right, okay. Any questions or discussion
Your
from the board?
compensation is directly this amount per each individual tax bill you send out, and you are not compensated in any other form other than this, correct?
I get reimbursed for envelopes and stamps that the district, but I don't get compensated for office supplies.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at, there's no other compensation in regards to like an hourly employee.
No,
This is strictly
I'm not
per-
paid hourly, I'm paid to get work done, yeah.
Okay,
I produce work, I get paid. I don't get paid hourly, no.
all right. So this
And
is,
no benefits, which I know that.
this is almost like what I would refer to as piecework then.
Yes, it's piecework.
Okay. That does not sound like an outrageous amount to me.
So the total amount that we're billed, I don't have it in front of me, the total amount we were billed last year, do you have that, Mrs. Weaver?
Do you remember the pieces that we were?
So, well, I know it was approximately 9,800 pieces that, so it goes out 9,800 times, comes back in 9,800 times.
Actually, it's a little complicated because it talks, when you talk about how many times it's touched, it includes installment taxes. So if you collect for a bill and you click on installment taxes, you're going to touch more pieces or collect more than you would if it was just paid by the escrow company. So it's a little complicated just to say it's in and out, because it depends on how it's paid.
Yeah, so if everything goes well, you touch every bill twice. So you touch it once going out, you touch it the other time coming in. And so the compensation, if you, like, I think for this year, what was it, $1.50 or something?
For 2025, it's $1.35
$1.35, so $1.35,
to send out,
To send
and
it out.
$1.35 when I collect it.
right.
That's
So if
$2.70.
you have someone that's, that pays in installments, you'll touch that coming in, what, 3 times? Okay, and get billed $1.35 for all 3 times. If it's someone delinquent, then you have to send out a delinquent notice, and then you don't get anything extra on the backside unless they pay in installments. So that's, I guess, the simplicity of the process. I know there's a lot of work involved. I'm not diminishing it, but this tax collection thing is new to us, so we're just asking questions for clarity. All right, so total compensation from the district for this year would have been $28,000, right?
Again, and we're
Right.
collecting for the rest of the year. So that's just
Right.
an estimate.
So by 2029, we would estimate that our costs would go from 28,000 to 38,000 under the current proposal.
Right, and that's
Right.
if we were looking apples to apples, so that's, we collected the exact amount of.
Exact the same amount from the exact number of transactions.
Correct.
So if we have more property owners that need to be billed, you'll have more transactions, but
Yes.
probably not going to be significantly higher than that. So the only thing that stood out to me was the rate of escalation is like double the projected inflation, which over time it's been 3.5%. And you were right at 7% per year. And I know we just passed some years where we had 7, 8% inflation, so that's understandable there. But going forward, we expect to probably get back to our average since 2013, since they've been tracking that, more of a 3.5%, which that actually puts us pretty close to back to the nickel of increase that we were at before. So I just did 3.5%, moving from $1.30, which is what we had in 2024, 2025, $1.35. Adding 3.5% gives $1.40. Next year, $1.45, $1.50, $1.55, rounding the numbers, you know. So we would be ahead of the rate of inflation or projected inflation by approving your proposal. If we reduced it to this, it would be right with the projected rate of inflation. So any comments or concerns, questions?
I have a question.
Discussion from the board, yes.
So, as tax collector, you're like, this is your job, right?
Yes.
How many hours a week are you putting in? Curious. Like 40 hours a week type job?
No, it's not 40.
Okay, but you have to run it as a business where you're paying everything out of your pocket. You got your health care coming out, all that, right?
Yes.
Like it's like a job and, you know, it's
Correct.
not like, okay.
I'm not reimbursed for, like, only postage and envelopes. Every other expense, phone, my software, everything else, I'm paying out of pocket. I rent the building.
And then you do this for the public interest as
Right.
as a public servant in some ways,
Right.
but you're getting reimbursed. So these numbers that are like 28, is that like what you bring home and that's what you pay out of your pocket for everything? Like the 28, or is that just like you have
No,
to?
that would be gross. That's gross. That's not net.
Okay.
Because I pay taxes.
Okay. No, I was trying to get an idea
Right.
of what this is all
I get a
about,
W-2
so.
from you. So all kinds of taxes are taken out.
So you would provide service to Dover School District, but you're also simultaneously providing services to the township and to one other entity. the
York County.
York County. So those three rates of compensation puts you up at roughly about $80-some thousand, right? Roughly. Is that correct? For this year?
I don't know. I haven't seen my W-2s.
Yeah, okay.
Or my
So,
W, whatever.
Based on what we can find out, it's roughly that. So it, you know, projecting out to 2029, you know, it's going to be much more than that.
The county is paying $295 for 2024. I haven't heard the rate for, they give, it's max of 3%, the CPI. So it'll be up over $3, and then theirs is going up. We do that for 4 years, so it potentially could be, I didn't do the math out on the county.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Ms. Keener? Yes,
I
Director
have
Meeks.
one for Mrs. Weaver. Do we have a line item in the budget at all? For, yes.
Absolutely, yes.
And what type of increase are we allowing in that budget? The 10 cents? Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from Ms. Keener?
I would like to say one thing. I have to say thank you for last year getting the bills to me, passing that budget. Third time in 25 years, we got the bills out July 15th. You guys did a great job. Miranda did a great job. Hopefully we can do it in 2025, but I want to say thanks for pushing that budget, because it helps. You guys get your money sooner if we get the bills out when they're dated.
Well, that's new information for us. Third time in 25 years.
Yeah, usually you miss it. You miss it.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for what you do
Thank
for all
you.
of us. Thank you. All right, next agenda item is agenda item 6.20, policy second reading. Is there any discussion? Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Chair recognizes our treasurer for bills paid discussion.
All right, I did go through the registers that I have up to date, and everything was mainly routine. I had one question about the email here. There was a $17,000 mower purchase, so I just asked for some details on that, and to make sure it was the budget line item I thought it was. Mrs. Weaver confirmed that, and she actually showed me the 3 quotes that Mr. Fluke had gotten, and we had budgeted $19,500 for it, and he did some good shopping and got it at $17,000. So good job, Mr. Fluke. I had no other questions on bills paid. For the treasurer's report.
All right, any questions?
Go ahead.
Oh, you want to go ahead and handle that? Let's dispense with the bills paid. Any questions or comments, concerns about the bills paid report? Okay.
Yep, on to the November and December treasurer's reports. Everything looked routine. We're taking in $1.3 million in real estate taxes, so tax collector's doing a good job. Yeah, nothing else that I need to inquire about.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right, next agenda item is agenda item 6.23, the audited financial statements for year ending June 30th, 2024. That information is attached, available to the public. Any questions, comments? Next is agenda item 6.24, minutes of the November 12th meeting. They are attached. It's under a link that's under the View Minutes tab. Any questions, corrections, edits? Hearing none, we'll move on. I would just include November 19th minutes. Any edits, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none. Agenda item 6.26, the minutes of the December 3rd board reorganization meeting. Any corrections, deletions, or edits? That item has also been slightly amended. There was, let me look for it here. Yeah, there is a statement that has been added late today on that. It has been bolded to clarify who is in the chair during any particular action. And that's as a result of the temporary president versus the elected president. Agenda item 6.27, any corrections, deletions, or comments, edits? Hearing none, we'll move on to a discussion item. Agenda item 7.01, solar panel grant discussion. And I'll open this up with just a comment. Anything that may have been quoted out of an executive session is inappropriate because executive sessions are just that. They're not open to the public. So not sure how a member of the public heard about anything that may have been said, but I can tell you from my recollection, you were not misquoted. The statement that you received was not accurate. All right, the floor is open for discussion on this item. I'm sure. All right, any discussion from the board?
I have a question just for Miranda. She might be able to answer. This is just a last-minute question I just had. In regards to this grant, and I know you've been reaching out to a lot of people about it and just gathering a lot of information. I was just curious if you heard any feedback in regards to other school districts and what's happening with the grant?
With regards to what? Be more specific?
I guess maybe their deliberation or how they're pursuing it and what it looks like for them. And I don't know, I don't want to be like an island here where we're just trying to figure this out without, you know, external input too, so.
I don't know of any in York County that are. There are some that they're working with in other parts of Pennsylvania, but none that are currently.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I thank you for all the details that you've brought in. It's very helpful to continue the discussion with that much information, so.
So there was some question about one of the options, which was to use the farm field that we currently have as the location for this. And it's my understanding that there's some issues with who's using that land now. Can you, I'd like to recognize you, Mrs. Weaver, if you can, or maybe Dr. Houck.
Yes, there was an agreement that was signed with the board, actually approved by the board in 2018. From what I can tell, it was never executed because I don't have a signed copy. So I have reached out to the individual who was to farm the land to have a discussion with him with regards to that.
Okay, and we haven't received a response from them yet.
No, I have not received a response. I do continue to try to contact him, but he has not responded back.
Okay. Dr. Houck, do you have anything to say? Okay, so just to be clear, so we sublet that property out to a local farmer or individual that is using the land currently. The board in 2018 approved a contract with that individual or entity.
Correct.
However, we don't have a copy of the signed agreement. So to our knowledge at this point, there's no signed agreement associated with that?
That's correct. And the agreement, as it's stated, expired in 2020.
Oh, okay.
So it was a yearly contract that obviously never, as far as I can tell, was never executed, nor was there another contract after that.
Okay. Mr. Pratt, I saw you lean forward. Did you have something to say?
No, making note to check on that, though.
Okay, very good.
Is that with Byron?
So without knowing whether we extended the agreement, if it indeed expired, so that's an unknown, we would need to clear that up certainly if we were going to use that location for a solar panel field, because we could be violating a contract that we're bound by. And then if there is a second agreement, that was never approved by the board then, or is it routine to just extend contracts without board approval?
Don't quote me on this. I think when we put that agreement together, there was language that unless we gave notice that we were going to not continue the agreement, that he can continue to utilize the property until we gave notice.
Okay.
I'm going to double check our records. I know we put that together with him based on the usage, so I'm going to double check and make sure we have that, and I should have some information for you prior to next week.
Okay, excellent. So that's good to know. If we find there's a problem, that could be an issue for moving forward on it. But what is our deadline for that grant?
31st.
31st?
Of January.
January 31st. So we're working against time on this. So.
Are we just going to be voting on the approval to apply for the grant?
Yes.
And that's it?
Well, this is,
It's
Mrs. Weaver, if you would.
Yeah,
clarify.
it would be a board resolution, so it would be applying for the grant. But I would say that I think if we were awarded the grant and then chose not to utilize the money, I would say that would, I don't know, if the board isn't on board for this type of a project, I wouldn't go through with the resolution because I think it would look bad.
It also, correct me if I'm wrong, would require some people to do some legwork.
Yes.
Ahead of time.
Absolutely,
And so
yes.
we're going to ask them to do the legwork.
Pro bono.
and then at the end, we're going to say, sorry, we're not doing it. So that's just another thing to consider.
I mean, if you got the grant, you would then, or
No,
before we
even-
apply for the grant?
Even to apply.
Oh, okay.
Yes. There's a lot, it's extensive work that needs to be done in order to gather the data for the grant.
Okay.
So I guess what's one of the key focals here is,
Approve this in order to get all of the
And
grant
not
writing
next week?
done. No.
oh, okay. So this is another action then, is what we would have
Correct.
to be doing. So if we were going to take action on this tonight, we would have to, the board would have to approve and adding it to the agenda for tonight, before we could then accept a motion on a proposal to proceed forward with the solar panel grant discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, with the action. So because it's not on our agenda as an action item tonight, just to be clear, in order to act on that tonight, we would have to have a majority vote of the board approving adding it to the agenda tonight for action.
I have to say that I think before even going there, I think we need to talk more about the information we've been given. You know, are we comfortable with the data? Are we comfortable with the return of investment? All the things that we brought up before, I think there needs to be more discussion about it.
Well, let's discuss it.
Yeah.
What questions do you have, or what would you like to add to it?
I just want some feedback, and I'm interested to know what other people think about the data that we've been given.
Not the integrity of the data, but the actual,
Yeah, what are you
Yeah.
feeling like this, you know, this information presented to us, the extra information on what it looks like to install, the costs involved, the return of investment, everything. I just want to hear more.
right.
I voiced before that, for me, the numbers presented by the consultant, or whatever we call this body that came to us with this proposed grant, a lot of these numbers are projections, because none of us know exactly what the future holds. You're dealing with solar, cloudy days, how much does it generate? Partly cloudy days, how much does it generate? How much do these panels deteriorate every year as far as efficiency of energy getting from the panels? When the group put together the cash flow analysis, he says, or they say, utility escalation rate 3% a year. I tried to go through their numbers and match that. I don't come up with 3%, I come up with less than 3%, which for me is good, because I'd rather be a little conservative than overly aggressive. But when I think about utility rate going up 3% a year for the next 20 years, if you go back and look at MedEd's electric rates, they were pretty level up until about 2021. Might be 5 cents a kilowatt hour, then it was 6 cents a kilowatt hour, then it's back to 5 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, all of a sudden, MedEd's rates for residential is 11 cents a kilowatt hour. For us, according to Mrs. Weaver, we're paying 9.5 cents, something like that, a kilowatt hour. If these rates don't escalate by 3%, our savings goes down. So we're projecting that the electric's going to go up 3% a year, which again, if you look at MedEd's history, which I've done, I'm having trouble justifying 3% a year for the next 20 years in electric rates going up. We've got a new administration in Washington. They're saying they're going to go back to turning on oil wells, turning on natural gas, whatever. Again, we don't have a crystal ball. They might be full of mud, and that may never happen. We don't know. But I'm not comfortable investing the type of money we need to invest in this project based on somebody's best guess. And that's really, for me, that's what we're dealing with. And as one of the directors pointed out the other month when we talked about this technology is still developing. I don't think we know exactly how panels are going to behave over the next 20 years. I asked a question the other month about what's the cost of getting rid of these panels, because I would think they're considered hazardous waste. Usually that means a lot of money to get rid of them. We were told $1 a pound. I'm not sure how to convert a pound to these panels. I tried to look it up. It looks like it's somewhere around $40 to $50 a panel right now, the best guess, to get rid of them. So we've got to take that into consideration. I'm not a fan of putting them on the roof. We looked at this field, now we've run into a block there. For me, I think we table this for at least a year and see what happens.
I agree, totally. There's too many questions in the air. We don't know about the land, we don't know about the roofs, we don't know what's going to be happening with solar. I think it's a big risk.
From a financial standpoint, we need to look at the upfront cost and what the compounding interest we would lose on spending that upfront cost. And with our facilities survey or facility study still not completed, we don't know what we're going to be in for with that either. So I think until we're comfortable with that rolling budget and we see, 3 years out, if we have a balanced budget, we can work some of these things into that plan, but we're kind of a little bit blinded right now, I think. So I think we need to wait. And this is the first time that they've offered this grant. So if it's successful, they'll do it again next year, and we can take advantage of it then maybe. That's my 2 cents. What's the upfront cost, Mrs. Weaver? Is it 600?
It would depend on which project you chose.
Okay.
Yes. But, we just provided this to the board because it was an opportunity that came forward.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
But if you would like to wait, that obviously there's a good chance, that it could come through again, and we could reevaluate this in a year or so.
Yeah, I think we should take the time to really research it. I agree with you about the budget impact. We still have an uncertain budget. I'm not comfortable with that big of an expenditure while we're still trying to get the budget in good shape. I actually looked at solar panels for my home and I decided against it for numerous reasons. And I spoke to someone who's a senior person at a property management and construction company, and they said they would never put solar panels on their commercial buildings because of risk of fire. They're not common, but they're very hard to extinguish if one starts. And we've got a brand new high school. I don't want to risk that. Director Wolverton brought up some really good points about wind developments and that technology that seem very promising. So I think we can take the time to truly research it more than we have had time so far, and we can make a decision next time around, an informed decision, and we can see where the technology is going, like Director Wolverton said.
Yeah, it's the technology that catches my attention. The idea that what's being done in Europe, as I brought up once before in here, along the roadsides, when you got literally things that are 5 foot high, this big around, and they're just going around nice and slowly off of cars that are doing 20 to 30 miles an hour, not high-speed wind turbines that have to be built on top of a mountain and everything else. Europe is really taking a look at what they can do and how to do it, and I think it's going to be coming to the United States. It's just a matter of time. And I am totally against putting anything on these roofs based on the mere fact of the hazard that it presents. I also think that, we have budgetary constraints, we have budgetary issues that need to be dealt with first so we can lay out what we can actually use for any kind of project, whether it be this or anything else in the future. I'm against it at this point.
And if those turbines do pick up in this country, it's no better high traffic area than a school. There's a lot of traffic coming in and out of a school. So.
Yeah, you take, was it Mayfield Street or whatever it is right there, and all of them.
So aren't we talking about the land lease and not necessarily the roof of the school building for the solar panels?
Next question, can I ask, how much land are we talking about?
7.2 acres.
So isn't that
Do
an
we have
option?
any idea what we're actually getting for rent?
We have, as of today, we have not collected anything.
So we leased it for no rent. That's a good deal.
Was it
That
just
is
a
foolish.
land
Okay.
use lease where he would pay back a percentage of his proceeds from
No.
growing, or was it an agreement for a fixed dollar amount?
Fixed.
Okay. Maybe we
I
should terminate.
want to recognize Director Wolverton. He was.
I rent my farm out, that stops immediately after this season. Boom. We're collecting rental on that property. I have several people who would rent that in a heartbeat, for several $100s an acre.
Is that contract that was approved in 2018, did it have a fee associated with that?
Yes.
Okay. And so we didn't collect anything?
Not from what we can tell, there was nothing that
All
went
right.
through the general ledger.
Yeah. So we could probably do better there.
I can guarantee $200 an acre from these
Sounds
guys.
like we got a renter.
All right.
All right.
I'll put you in contact with the gentleman.
All right. So Director McKinney, do you have anything else? I'm sorry. I didn't
no.
want
No, I was just
talking over each
clarifying,
other.
I was answering Director Hogan.
Yeah.
The land option was a third option. We had two roof options, and then I believe it was Director Kindig wanted to ask about ground installations. So that was just a third option that we started looking into.
So the lease of the land is an option. So most of the comments that were advocating against it were referring to the roof of the school, which may not be a good option, but the land may be a good option.
Well, it may be a good option. The problem is the land that we're talking about using is currently being leased by someone without an agreement or any payment, so that has to be cleared up if we're going to use that property.
Right, and that can be investigated and
Yeah.
determined, and we have an attorney here who can figure all that out.
Problem is, if they want us to take action on this tonight, we don't have the answers to those questions tonight. That's the.
Well, that might be the case, but
Yeah.
moving forward, we're talking about a $20 million revenue over the course of 20 years, right, as a result of the solar project?
Yeah, that's what they're estimating, that's what Generation 180 is estimating.
Okay, so we're looking at $20 million revenue, on top of, the potential of using land, which doesn't seem to be risk adverse. Technology's been around for solar a long time, and it's advanced to the point to where, it's moving across the United States at a good clip for an alternate source of energy outside of oil and other things that are a detriment to the environment. So I feel like we do have budget concerns that might restrict us from moving forward, but I also feel like the board is technology adverse in a lot of ways, and I think we need to be forward-thinking, and I think we need to look at potential revenue sources, and this is definitely one that we should consider. So I'm going to be voting for it. I think Ms. Weaver is a great leader moving this forward. We have people willing to come and do the analysis and the estimates and professionals, and we can make this happen, and we can start today. So that's where I'm at with that.
Mrs. Weaver, I'd like to ask you, you have a pretty keen eye for investments. You've helped the district to do quite well with the funds that we have. Looking at this as an investment and gaining some return on the back end that makes it worth the risk, how do you weigh and judge this investment opportunity into solar? Is it a flip of the coin, or is this something that you would lean strongly, this is a great opportunity, or is it the risk too high?
I would say that
you could make an argument for either or. We do have the facility study, RFPs coming through soon. We don't know what we don't know. So I could understand why the board would want to move forward with it, and I can understand why the board would want to wait and get more information with regards to our building structures.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that. Any other discussion or questions, comments, positions? Okay. Ready to move forward? to
I
the next
motion
discussion?
to put the vote on the agenda for the solar panel project.
Okay. It has been moved that we place this decision on the agenda for tonight. Is there a second? Motion fails due to lack of a second.
I just want to say I would have supported that motion had we had a resolution to the land, because I think that that one makes sense. And I think it's a no-brainer too. I mean, if we have an opportunity to bring in revenue, and it's our property, and it's it says we're getting free technical assistance and examinations from the solar provider. And so there's so many people putting solar panels out in fields. I mean, massive amounts of solar panels are going in still every day. There must be something beneficial to that they would continue those projects. Why would we not ask more questions about how this would benefit us as we're in the debt that we have right now poses us such a problem, and we stress over our budgets. Here's an opportunity, So I feel like the more questions we can ask, the better that would be for us. But this is unfortunate that something like that is hanging us up. And so I hope that can get resolved, because hopefully in a year, if we have an opportunity to come back to this, it would be a great opportunity that we could see some benefit from for our district in the future.
Any other discussion on the issue? All right, hearing none, let's move on to policies. Agenda item 7.02, policies first reading. Those policy briefs are on the public content, as well as the actual attachments of those. Any questions, comments, concerns about any of the policy proposals?
The policy 011, I know there were some comments about that. Can we get a little bit of clarification on where some of those changes came from?
So this, and I don't have my briefing sheet in front of me tonight, and just to ease everyone's mind, this is not something that's going to be acted on tonight or next week. It would be after the second reading of these before we could even put it on the agenda for action, so which the earliest that it could be approved without any revision would be in February, the end of February. There was language in here that says the board supports the principles of governance and leadership adopted by the board. I don't think there's really any problem with that, but it goes without saying it's redundant. If we approve the policy, we approve it. The issue came up about signing by individual school directors. If we approve it and it's policy, we're bound by it. There's no point in signing it. No previous board has signed it. I think this first went in it says 2019, but I think a version of this might have been slightly earlier. It hasn't been complied with, so if we're not going to have a signed document, and what purpose does it serve to have a signed document hanging? Where would it hang? In what school or in the administration building? Who's going to see that? Besides this, it wouldn't be on the website, I wouldn't think, but I think it serves no purpose to have it signed by the individual directors. Policy is policy, and we're going to adhere to it. The language of Pennsylvania school boards we can't speak for the Pennsylvania school boards, we only speak for the Dover area school board. Establishing, equipping, and furnishing, and maintaining the district school system, that is language that is taken straight out of the law. I think the speaker, public speaker was correct. It's still in effect. Legislature hasn't changed it. That's our job. The elected and appointed members, there's no distinction between board members. How you got on the board doesn't make any difference. As long as it's legal, you're on the board. So there's no distinction once you're on the board if whether you're elected or appointed. The impacts, both short and long term, it's not just in the classroom. It's on the district and it's in the community. That's why I added that language in there. Therefore, we commit to the following principles. And so that language I changed when we posted this last revision here. We commit that we will, ... Actually, the format, we commit to the following principles, actually makes more sense. Under the first section, lead responsibly, the stricken language there is not being removed. It's just being moved down to another section in the document. The language, collaborate and communicate with the superintendent, who shall have a seat on the Board of School Directors of the district and the right to speak on all matters before the board but not to vote. That was the language that when we discussed this before, that Dr. Houck said that satisfies my concerns. So we changed that to that because there was another replacement for that. The language that we're striking there is acknowledging their role as the 10th member of the board and commissioned officer of the Commonwealth. The edits that are in under the Act ethically section, I just put the statements in parallel by not using the position, by not creating actual or perceived conflicts of interest, by understanding individual school directors. That's the way we will do it. Do not possess any powers or authority. I added the powers or authority, or powers or in there. It said do not possess any authority outside of the collective board. By accepting, and I think that's an important, distinguishing thing here is when we're out on the street, we can't make decisions. We can't speak for the board. We are board members only empowered when we're in this room. So that is a distinction I think that needs to be clear. We're not empowered outside of the board meeting. We do have directors from time to time that I think assume powers outside or authority outside, but we don't. By accepting, it's an in parallel statement, board decisions and committing to moving. So I felt like the language was awkward. That it said previously, except that when a board has made a decision, it is time. I thought that was awkward. By accepting board decisions and committing to moving forward collectively and constructively, I think it's a cleaner statement. Under the next section, plan thoughtfully. The third bullet, develop comprehensive financial plan and capital improvement. It said master facilities plan, but the language that we're now using, the language evolves just like the title of business manager evolved into now we have a CFOO. This is, instead of a master facilities plan, it's called a capital improvement plan, and there's not just one, there could be several. So that is bringing that up with the language that we're currently using. Allocate resources to effectively impact student success. I expanded the language there, and I'm reminding folks, this is a proposal. Allocate resources to effectively and efficiently support the district and impact student success. Solar panels don't impact student success, but we're discussing solar panels, whether we're going to do it or not. That is about efficiently supporting the board. All right.
That's a capital improvement, the previous bullet point.
So evaluate continuously. Under the fourth bullet, focus on both short-term and long-term sustainability of the district, prioritizing student growth and achievement. It said before, focus on student growth and achievement. We can't just do that. Short-term and long-term sustainability of the district is imperative. We have projections that show us 7 to 8 years out as being upside down financially. So we have to maintain the integrity of this district financially, the sustainability of the district, or we're going to be in trouble. And this district is not alone. I looked at the numbers for the suburban school district. 7, 8 years out, they're in the red, and they're not going to be able to get out of it unless something changes. So that's part of our job. Under the next section, communicate clearly. I merely moved the statement from the top down into this section because communicating clearly and working together go hand in hand. That statement I felt belonged there. And then on the last bullet of the entire document under govern effectively, remain focused on the role of governance. And it said effectively delegating management tasks to the administration. I added the phrase appropriately and, so remain focused on the role of governance, appropriately and effectively delegating management tasks to the administration. There's some things that just aren't appropriate. But if it is appropriate, we should delegate that. So that's the basis. There's no sinister movement here. It was we found an error in this, and instead of just striking the italicized language at the top that we had a problem with, it's not improper to do a refresh of the document. This happens all the time with PSBA. We have these documents that are all over this agenda item here that are proposals that come from PSBA to refresh documents, to bring them up to date, to refine the language, and that's simply what we're doing here. So, hope that answers your question.
I was just asking.
Okay, no problem, no problem. It probably
No insinuations.
Yeah,
just-
we stated that before, but sometimes we forget or we suspect. That I know there's been some suspicion here that we're trying to disrespect the superintendent. That's under that policy 011. There's no disrespect there.
So a couple just general questions. So that you found the error in this, and the reason why I'm asking, again, not for suspicion or anything, I know that Dr. Cartwright was working on updating policies. That was a big project of hers. So I was just curious if this was one of those, because I know that the workflow of that previously was like dumps, like she was working on sections and then PSBA would send them and she would compare and then we'd review, and that's kind of how it worked. So I didn't know, among the other 10,000 things you have to do, Dr. Halk, if you were taking that over? Or?
Yeah, I think what had happened is that PSBA, as you know, sends out revisions, monthly or almost monthly?
Yeah.
And I think prior to Dr. Cartwright, the district was in the midst of COVID. I don't think that the updating was happening.
Right.
And so I think we found this cache of PSBA revisions that were never looked at.
Right.
I do not believe this policy was one of them. I don't know, or I'm not aware of PSBA asking for any revisions.
Well, I seem to recall, I think it was a community member that had asked if we had assigned something or other. So I think that's how it started, that
Correct.
this particular policy was reviewed.
And
it just kind of...
Yeah, that document
Okay.
does exist. It's in Mrs. Almond's office, but to our knowledge, we've never asked the board to sign it.
Okay.
So yes, that's
So
how
that's
this
kind of
came
what
up.
started it. It's like, oh, we don't have this signed thing and we never sign it, so we're going to strike that through. And while we're doing that, we're going to review the rest of this policy.
Yep.
So, okay. Would we be adverse as a board to add the word positively impact? I think that's a good recommendation.
Where would you like that?
It's off the top of the second page. Give me a second. Okay, top of the second page, last bullet point. Allocate student resources to effectively and efficiently support the district and positively impact student success.
I like that edit. 'Cause that's kind of language we're cleaning
Yeah.
up in the rest of the document.
Yeah.
I like that revision. And this is just a first reading, so we are...
So next month would be
we go back
first
to
reading again.
with the
Right.
edit, yeah. Well, while we're all looking at it, let's look for more opportunities.
I would encourage you to also look at these PSBA policies just as closely.
Yes.
I did struggle to find any other district that changed the language of the superintendent being the 10th member of the board and a commissioned officer of the Commonwealth.
I'm actually going to reach out to our PSBA representative and just kind of run this past her for a second glance as well. So I have that on my list of things to
Okay.
do. And see if they have any, because they have a whole legal department and stuff there. I'm not saying we would have to adopt any of their recommendations, but it would just, a second look would be.
So I have a question about that.
We
What
pay
is-
for this membership. We should use it.
What's the issue? What's this issue with the 10th member? What is the
Well,
issue?
I know that in board director training, that's how it's referred to. So in all of the training that we do, yes, with PSBA, right, that we're required to do some sort of training. That's how it's referred to. So I don't know if that's kind of industry standard but I'm going to ask. So maybe I can
So
shed
let me
some
ask you
light on
this. What if I called you the 7th member? Or 6th member? Does that make any difference to you?
I don't,
You're a board member. So is the superintendent. The law says that. So superintendents on the board, they have a seat of the board. They just don't have the right to vote. The law is the only thing that restricts them from voting.
so I think it's just the 10th non-voting member is used in boards. Like, it's just kind of a term that's used in boards.
I
It's
think
like the
it's-
last number that's not non-voting
I think it's
member.
intended to signify that the board member is an important position in the board and on the board.
Yeah.
And that it isn't a board of 9 who controls the superintendent. It's a board of 10. It's a team of 10, is how it's always worded. So I think it's designed to highlight the role of the superintendent as being the 10th member of the board.
Okay.
I see what you're saying. I just don't see any issue with shall have a seat on the board of directors. That's including the superintendent on the board as well. So
That language there is actually lifted directly out of the law. Who shall have a seat on the board of directors of the district and the right to speak on all matters before the board but not to vote.
What's your apprehension on the 10th member? Because it doesn't make sense to you, or
I
what's
think,
your apprehension on?
in my
Like, why
opinion,
change
it
that?
diminishes that they're the add-on.
Okay.
So not all superintendents utilize their right to speak on all matters of the board. We had a previous superintendent that elected not to speak very much. They used surrogates, so they would have other people come to the podium and speak for them, rarely speaking. But as much as you have a right to speak up, be recognized by the chair to speak, every board member has it. Superintendent has the same right to speak on all matters. There's no restriction.
Okay.
There's no caveat that you're a quote-unquote 10th member and you're a little bit less than the rest of us. You're on the board. You're a full member of the board. The only thing is the law restricts the superintendent, and I suspect it's because of potential conflict of interest. It restricts them from voting. That's the only restriction they have. And the phrase, the commissioned officer of the Commonwealth, of the state, that is a true statement. They are a commissioned officer, but in their role here, what type of amplification does that give their voice?
I don't know if it's amplification, it's just
What-
acknowledgement, maybe.
Well, I mean, they're a commissioned officer of the Commonwealth. None of us are. I don't feel any less on the board, and you shouldn't feel any less because you're not commissioned officers. You're elected officials. They're not, the superintendent is non-elected, but they have every right to be on the board by law and speak to all matters. I think that's very empowering. 10th member of the board, you're the appendage. That's the way I look at it. Commissioned Officer of the Commonwealth, that's a distinction. That's an earned distinction that's granted by the Department of Education. I think that's something worthy, but it does, in this context here, it doesn't amplify the voice.
I don't think I saw it as an appendage as much as a recognition that the board is comprised of 10 members. So we're not an add-on. The board is a 10-member board. It's not a
Absolutely.
9-member. So
Absolutely.
I didn't really see it as an appendage.
Yeah. I don't think the superintendent is an appendage either. I think they're a rightful member of the board. So anyway, that's the explanation on that. Any other questions or comments, concerns on that?
Can we talk about some of the other policies?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor this. I just have a quick question because I just feel like there's a little bit of apprehension. So this paragraph is causing concern, both from public, maybe some people from the board. So if we, I'm just saying, if you want to put it back to where it's what it was, what requires, how does that get done? Do we do this in a personal meeting and talk about it, or will we do it right now?
Do it now.
Why don't I take it to PSBA and get some other information from experts,
Okay.
and their
Then bring it
opinion
back and
on
we'll
one
talk about
versus
it.
the other, and maybe I can come back with a
Okay.
little bit more knowledge behind that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can go from
Let's do
there,
that.
maybe?
Yep.
I think it's something that, if you guys just give me a little bit of time, I can do some research and bring it back next week, and we can talk about it, and then we can talk, vote for it or do the first reading again in February. I don't think it's something that needs to be approved, I don't think it's urgent. Okay, so, okay.
Okay.
I'd like to look at policy 005, page 3. New section says officers of the board may only be removed from such office during the designated term of office after receiving notification of the reason for removal, opportunity for hearing before the board in accordance with applicable law. Our previous policy on this policy explained how an officer gets removed. This doesn't. Okay, it tells us why they can be removed, but how do they get removed? And I'm looking to you, Mr. Pratt.
Oh, okay, well, I didn't hear my name, I'm sorry. Thought there was a dramatic pause there for a second, that's how I was going. So, the reason this is being changed is based off the Jim Thorpe decision, where an individual was, the board president was removed, excuse me, as board president during their term as president, and there was no opportunity for the individual to understand why or how they were being removed. They challenged that decision by the board to remove them during their term, and the courts came back and did state that there was a property interest that that board member had as being an officer of the board, and that they had a right at that time, so they had a right to know why they were being removed and the opportunity to address those concerns of the board members. I do believe that you're still capable of removing them during their term as long as you provide them the reason and the rationale and then the opportunity to be heard on that matter. I don't think you have to deal with them until their term is expired, but you have to give them the opportunity, very similar to due process that we have with employees when they're being removed, and this modification is just based off of that decision out of Jim Thorpe.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with this language.
As vice president,
But
I understand.
how do you do it?
It'd be very similar to the way that you would remove them at any other point in time. You'd have to give them notice that you were going to remove them. You would have to give them the rationale why they're being removed, and then, or that the board wants them to be removed as the officer. You have to provide them the opportunity to present whatever they need to present to try to sway you differently, And then at that point in time, you would take the action that you would in any other situation after you've given that opportunity for them to be heard, to remove them as officer of the board.
Okay, so the previous policy said by majority vote of the board.
It's still in process, right? That's still the way that it has to be
So
done.
even though it doesn't say that,
Still the way the process is set
legal
up.
mind, that's how
Yes, sir.
it works.
Yep.
Do you
That
have
is
an
how it works.
understanding for why they struck that part out?
I
the part
do
that
not know
says
why PSBA
affirmative
struck
vote?
that part, that part out, no.
I can find out.
That PSBA.
I'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, but still the process is in place for removal, that it's just that you have to give them their due process if you're going to remove them.
So where does it say all of that?
It's
That
in
you
the court
just said?
decision.
That
It's
we
in the court
give-
decision.
But we need it in here probably. What you just said,
Well,
that we give notice and all
Oh,
of that
no, there's
stuff.
also under the statute, does outline how someone's removed as well, too.
Statute?
I'm sorry, school
1949
code,
Act
school
14.
code, I'm sorry, school code. Yep.
Does that need to be in our policies as well?
It's
For ease
referenced.
of reference? or-
It's referenced in your, in that policy, that section. And I'm sorry, I do not have it memorized.
I've got it right here.
Okay.
Section 514 of the school code
Yep.
says removal of officers, employees,
Oh,
et cetera. Do you need me to read this?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I apologize, yeah. Thank you.
Policy 610 and 611.
I'm sorry, before we move on, can I ask a question about
Sure,
this policy?
sure, I'm sorry.
That the board might want to discuss is the portion about committees. There is an opportunity in this policy for the board, if they so choose, to list the committees. So you need to talk about which of those check marks you want to check and which ones you don't. I will need that information for the second draft. You see, there's a bunch of places for you to check.
Hold on a second, let me get that. 005.
This is the same policy, 005, on the, toward the back, toward the end.
I got you.
Page 3.
So are these all the checks that were provided by PSBA? Because
Those are the choices, yes. Let me get to, the ones that are currently checked are checked because we currently have that in our current policy. So I'm asking the board to look over those to make sure that you still want those same items checked. Sorry.
No,
Director
you,
Reese.
so our current policy states that we should have committees. So we're not following our current policy.
well, the board decided to act as a committee of the whole. So we
So that overrode this policy. So we decided to do that and just
board
probably
action.
inadvertently.
Yeah, that was
neglected to update the
in
policy.
2022, I think. It wasn't this, the composition of the board was different. We had different members then, but the board at that time elected to go to a committee of the whole. So, which means that instead of having individual committees, this becomes the committee. Everything's discussed in public
Yes,
at one meeting instead of having individual committee meetings. I think it's easier for everyone to know what's going on, what the discussion is about matters, and also easier for the public actually to be informed about it because they don't have multiple committee meetings happening at the same time.
I believe that there was some communication back when we did change from Dr. Cartwright about how we needed to update our policies, but if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. I'm just saying, I recall some communication in regards to that. So I don't know, I'd have to look back through my email.
Mr. Pratt, what the logistics of that, the board making a decision to change our structure that way and then not updating the policy, does that matter? It's just not clean?
It's just not clean. You decided at a public meeting to just how you were going to run your committees, and you took action at that public meetings.
Yeah.
Whether that policy was updated or not, that was the decision of the board in that public meeting to do that. Should it have been updated? More than likely, it should have been updated. If you decide to go back to the committee process that it used to be, you would do the same exact process. You would vote on that's how you're going to do committees, and then you obviously would update the policy or modify the policy as needed. But your actions and then your subsequent actions of committee as the whole really trumps that policy at this point in time because of the fact that you
Okay,
are,
that answers my
you
question.
took the
Okay.
action.
Thank you. So this particular, so this policy doesn't have to describe what committees, it just has to say we have committees.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. There is a section there if you
Where you
wanted to,
can
where you can.
List the committees.
And so I got this from Dr. Hauk. This was the 2022 board committee structure, and there was a curriculum, professional development, and comprehensive planning committee. That would cover under our current policy 005. It lists curriculum, professional development committee. Comprehensive planning committee that is listed in our governing documents was combined, so those two committees were already combined in the previous structure. And it says that we were supposed to have two separate committees, but they were already combining two of those into one. There was also a human resource and finance committee. Our document says human and fiscal resource, but what they were actually calling it was a human resource and finance committee. And then there was a facilities slant safe and supportive school committee, which is word for word out of our governing documents. And then I've got the membership of each of those committees as they existed at that time. There were 3 board members assigned to each of those 3 committees. And then there were members of the administration. So there were actually more members of the administration on the committee than there were board members. So it looks like they had 7 administration members on each committee and then 3 board members.
So, Director Emig, can I put you on the spot?
Go ahead.
All right. So the 4 of us were on the board previously when we had committees, and you were on for a significantly longer amount of time. Which way do you prefer personally? A
The way
committee?
it was, the committees,
Why do you prefer that?
because it'll shorten the meetings up. That's what it will do,
Yeah. Okay.
because you have each person reporting out what happened at their committee, and it won't take as long. So I prefer the committees.
Director Wolverton, since you've been through both, which one do you prefer?
I like the committees
Why do you like the committees?
for just that reason. It was more in-depth discussion, straight to the meat of the matter, not having the public forum to have to be, you could just sit in a room and go for it. What were the issues, and let's beat the devil out of the details, and that's what we did.
Now, these were public meetings, though.
Yes.
So why didn't you have the public forum? What are you talking about?
We would have, like, they'd be in different rooms.
We'd be in different rooms.
So there would
It's a
be
smaller
maybe,
group of
sometimes we'd be in the
individuals.
library, we would have.
I don't think any public really showed up. I mean, Craig, I remember Craig coming to one or two, there were a few more than that, but public didn't really come to them because they were all over the place, so.
It seemed like the continuity for the issues that were at hand were easily taken from month to month without a problem. People knew what we were discussing more in depth.
That's a good point. What do you think?
I had issue with it, and I'll say why. I can be completely transparent. I didn't get to choose or have any input on the committee I was on. It wasn't my passion area, but I mean, I took interest in that committee because that was my job. We did have detailed discussion, but then I would come to the main meeting, and I would not know anything that happened in the committees that I was really hoping to have more input on, and I didn't really know how to ask the questions. And the documents prepared for statement were not prepared by board members. They were prepared ahead of time and just read off by a board member. So it just seemed like you're just kind of sitting there, and then you just check a box, it was done. And so I didn't care for it. I like how we get to talk things out, and I don't mind late meetings, sorry.
What if you were on committee that you wanted to be on?
I still feel like when we are together and all the different thought process and questions being posed to a problem or a topic of conversation, it sparks more curiosity about something that maybe I wouldn't have had an opportunity to even think that way had we not all been together and talked and discussed it out. You know, I see the benefits of both. I'm not going to lie. I do see the benefits of both. But I kind of felt like it was more the board members sitting there listening and being told, and not really a whole lot of dialogue. There was a few questions, but it wasn't a lot of dialogue, and I feel like dialogue is important as a whole, as a whole board.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to have committees, you got to have trust in those people who are in those committees. And the end result isn't going to be something that you need to be a part of because you trust the board members. If we can't trust who's in that committee, then it would need to be an open so we can all participate in that conversation. So that's kind of, I think, the gist of a committee. I would like to be out of here quicker. I think committees are good because I think you can do more in-depth analysis. You can have discussion, and you're multiplying everything that we can do instead of trying to get it all done in this time period. But we got to have trust. So I got to trust everyone that, you know, our interests, like our vision and where we're headed as a board, that they're all taking it. You know, we've had those conversations, you know, into consideration.
Yeah, I just want to say this, in regards to meetings, since I've been on this board, I've been hearing certain sects of people on the board, and I'm not talking about just recent, but like, since the beginning I've been on the board, I walk in the doors and I would hear certain board members say, well, I hope this is a quick meeting, yeah, I'm tired, I don't, you know, this and that, and so I feel like the grumblings still go on, even now, and this is a job that we knew was going to be a sacrifice, and I don't want to come down and make anybody feel offended right now, but I know these meetings are long, and it gets tiring, and it's hard sometimes to look ahead at a meeting that's coming up and be like, ooh, I'm excited for that, but I know this is good, honest conversation, good work, and it's worth it. It's worth our time, it's worth our energy, and it's not for everybody. I'll say that. So if it's a bother, I really feel like like we have to come to terms with this is how it is for now. This is not a bad thing that we're having long meetings. It just isn't. I know there are some people who spend all day in the district, and I feel like that's a lot for them. And so for that point, you know, I understand, and I'm trying to be empathetic and compassionate to your time that you put in. It's more my focus on the 10. Sorry, but the ones that come in the afternoon or in the evening. But I just want you to know, like, it's just hard to hear it. It's hard to hear the grumbling still. I just think everybody, if you're going to be invested, invest wholeheartedly and just get past it, you know. That's how I feel about it.
We can still have long meetings with committees. Does that make you feel better?
I really think being in a group right now and learning the way we're learning is beneficial to all of us. So
I'll have to say, when I attended the meetings with the previous board as a member of the public, I felt like I didn't hear much. There was not much discussion. There was just so moved, second, vote on almost everything. There was not much deliberation in public. That was back, I guess, when they had the committees. So I like, and I would like, as a member of the public, the committee as a whole, where I get to hear the deliberations, I get to hear the details. I know it's long. I came and sat through the long meetings once they switched over the new format, but I think it's transparent and beneficial for the public and for the board to have everyone involved in the discussions instead of groups of 3 here And like Alan said, it's going to take a lot of trust to, if I'm not on the curriculum committee, to take that report and run with it. So I like the committee as a whole approach, really, just for the learning process and for the transparency to the public.
I'm not adverse to long meetings as long as they're efficient and effective.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. If I'm sitting through a meeting and we're walking out and there's no next steps or no resolution, that's,
Yeah.
so I'm not, like, I'll sit through meetings.
Yeah.
As
As a
long
board
as they're
member,
efficient.
you can't put a time limit on and say, I'm out of here at this certain time. You've got to, you committed to the position. You've got to put the work in.
I was on the facilities committee, and it was much better. I don't know if it's a much better format from my experience. And I don't know, and that doesn't have anything to do with length of meetings or anything. We just got more information. We had better discussion. Like Director Wolverton said, there was a continuity from one meeting to the next. Oh, we talked about that last month. I don't know, there just was more meat and more substance and more, it was more effective, I think. And that's just speaking from my personal experience. And it could have just been because it's that committee.
I mean, just mathematically speaking, logistically speaking, you're going to get more information because you have 3 committees running concurrently. That if we were to do that as a board of a whole, that's 3 hours. So that's 3 hours of information that the board is receiving. So having been the person presenting in the curriculum committee, there were many, many pieces of information I shared with the board that we don't have time in our board meeting to share with you. And so this is entirely your decision, and I don't have a preference either way. But I did want to share that with you for your consideration.
I thought we got a lot more information about the facilities.
We're not limited to 3 committees. I heard you say 3, right?
We had 3.
But we
If you
can
have
have 5 if...
Right, if you
Okay.
have 4 committees, then that's 4 hours worth of information that wouldn't be shared in a board meeting.
It also reduces the number of members you can have on the committee from the board, because you got 4 meetings going on simultaneously. So they did 3 committees, so you could have 3-3-3 split. How long were those meetings? 1 hour? 2 hours?
They were, but the board can call that meeting at any time as long as it's advertised and open to the public.
I did have a little bit of an issue with the fact that one of the committees met at like 10 a.m. I think it was the
I think that was the policy committee.
Policy committee. Yes, Director Herman was on that one.
And
So
yes, and
I
she
didn't
was
have
able
the
to-
opportunity to like switch or go, I couldn't go to that. So I would request that we had committee meetings at the same time so that we had the option to attend. But
So that was a situation where you had a policy committee. It's not listed in our governance document, but we had a policy committee with 1 member on it. How does that work?
yeah, I didn't like that.
Yes, yeah, so
But probably
I can't
because
see the
Director
effectiveness of
Herman
that at all.
could attend, maybe because of the time of day or something, so.
Can I interject? I was just at an event where I was sat with a friend who's on the board at Central, and she was telling me they just had their professional development committee, and I said to her, I didn't even know there was such a thing. She said, yeah, we only meet once a year. We meet for like 3 hours, and we have all these people involved, like the administration, teachers, and then whoever the board members are. And so I don't know, just throwing that out there, like that's an extra committee, I know that, but maybe there's a different structure that would work too. For certain things, like maybe if we think outside the box, that we would get more in-depth and detailed coverage if we would do something else. There's always ways to maneuver and move things around so that we get the information or the time that we need, maybe, and also shorten our meetings. I'm just throwing that out there.
I find it interesting, let's take the policy committee. 1 member was going through and vetting all the policy, bringing it to the board, and as a member of the public, I attended these meetings with no deliberation ever on policy. The only policy that I heard them bring up with some minimal deliberation was coming out of the committee structure to go to the committee of the whole. Went straight to a vote, was approved. I mean, if my recollection is off, let me know, but.
Well, I wouldn't recommend we set our committees up like that.
This way.
Because, yeah, that was not good.
That was not us.
Yeah, we didn't like that format. So, but I think 3 committees with 3 board members, that way there's 3 people, so there's three
There's-
people, so everybody
On that
kind
particular,
of checks and balances.
yeah, on that particular committee, policy committee, there was not even any administration members on there. So I don't even know how that works.
We met, and she joined our meetings. I don't know that that committee is necessary anymore, because when I provide you with the policies, they are not vetted. They're blank for you to check or not check. So when we do our policy committee meetings, we're looking at them and just determining, do we do it this month, next month? And I'm collecting information. For instance, some of the policies we have today are special ed related. Well, I don't know that information. So I have Mrs. Snyder run through it and say, is there anything on here that doesn't match our practice? So we're not really vetting them. I wanted to assure the board that you are seeing the policies as they are given to us by PSBA.
With the exception that you put some X's in the box for selections, right?
No, those X's only indicate what are in our current policy for you to see.
Okay, so, how does PSBA know that?
I put those in just so
Okay.
you would know
That's what I thought.
which ones we already have X'd,
Right.
that we already have chosen.
Well, when it comes to policy, we could not talk about policy in any of the committees and keep that in, as a committee as a whole item all the time, since policy is one of our biggest
Well,
responsibilities
according
as
to
a
our current
board.
governance documents, that's what there is no policy committee in the governance documents.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so they listed
Oh,
the
so-
committees that I read off, there's 5 of them,
Now
I
it's all
think,
coming
and we have
together.
4.
Yeah, we meet as an admin team because we
And she
want
just
to make.
joined.
Yeah, and we want to make recommendations to you. When I bring these policies to you, if there are recommendations that we have, that's why we meet as a team, because I'm not going to know all of that. So that's what those policy meetings are for.
Well, the previous board called it the policy committee, so
You're right.
that's new news. I didn't realize that.
When you said we would meet, who is
The
we that used to
administration.
meet with?
I'm just talking about our current practice is, I invite, for instance, if there is a policy for technology, I will invite Mr. Boyd to that meeting. So I invite whomever is pertinent to help us make recommendations. But we are not vetting them.
Right.
You are seeing them as PSBA, but we want to provide you with some recommendations. So we meet once a month.
You're just the pass-through, kind of.
Right. I can't give you recommendations. I need my people. I need my experts to do that, so.
So when you were meeting with the board representative previously, that was the one-person policy committee, I think you mentioned that you would meet with that person?
We met at the same as we do now, but she joined us.
Who is the we, though?
The administrative team, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the CFO was typically there, and then we would invite whomever was relevant to the policies that PSBA posed.
So it was a situational committee, depending on the topic.
Yeah, Mr. Perkins is typically there, our, high-level admin team.
Yeah. So that one was a pretty loose structure then, sort of.
Yes.
Right.
So I just want to say I'm very passionate about going back to committees. I think it was way more effective. I think the communication was way better. I will be completely honest and say that I do think it is more difficult for the public to attend. I do acknowledge that. But does the public want us to get work done? Or does the public want to hear everything? I want to get work done. I want to know what's going on. I want to have consistency. And it was, in my opinion, much better for my committee. And it sounds like Director Whitmer didn't have as much of a positive experience. But I do understand that the public can't be in 3 places at one time. So I would encourage the board to consider it, at least try it, because some of you have never taken part in that structure, so we can always go back. But if we tried it for 6 months or something, we could always say this isn't working. and we could go back, but it's just my thoughts.
So, Director Conley, in the committee, it says in here like, I think it said the president or something appoints. I think that's what I read. You would
Yeah.
appoint?
Right.
So, based on Heidi's comment, let's do this. Is this something that we can do, and you just design the committees and appoint people, or how's it work?
Well, we're operating now under a motion. It was a passed motion that we do a committee of the whole. We would have to vote as a majority to come out of that. So we didn't change anything to the structure when we took over. It's interesting that in the previous board, prior to the 5 new members that came on in 2023, was that right? 2023. I hardly heard any discussion or public discussion about policy. There was a briefing from one member, and everything pretty much sailed through in the consent agenda approval. And when this group of 5 came on, there's suddenly a lot of interest in policy, but not the PSBA policy like the one that we just discussed tonight. And there's been a lot of public interest in policy 005 since that was introduced in November. We've heard that comment at every single meeting since.
Well, we can keep policy out of the committee structure.
Mm-hmm.
We can keep that separate. We don't have to, since it is.
Well, sure we can, but I think the point you were making before is that you know, it's more convenient to do it without the public. You know, as many members of the public.
I never said it was more convenient to do. I actually said that I understand it's not as convenient for the public. So I said the opposite of what you just said.
I'll accept that correction. But the involvement of the board in the actual policy development was next to nothing before. Now we're engaging and trying to be transparent with what we're changing in policy, and we still, by and large, accept everything PSBA sends. That's still the general practice. If you go back and look at our agendas for the last year.
I don't know why we keep talking about policy. We're talking about committee structure.
Oh, okay. Well, that's one policy. That's one committee that we had that they did away with the previous motion. So let's remove policy out of it.
Yeah.
So the committee structure before allowed 3 committees to meet, but when you came to the board, to the general board, you had 6 other board members that were going to vote on that.
Right.
How did they receive any information about what that policy did?
Policy?
I'm sorry, about what that committee did.
What the information was? Yeah. Okay, so I was on the facilities committee, so we would get, and it was Zach, I don't remember his. Thank you, Mr. Gump. He would brief us and show us PowerPoint presentations of, for example, the roofs, and he would show us pictures of spots, and I'm just giving one example. And then we would take notes, and then we would come back, like ask lots of questions. What's the next step? Which roof is getting repaired? Where's the money coming from? Like all of that stuff. And then we would come, right after the meetings, we would come to the meeting as a whole, and we would report back that information. So the meeting as a whole wouldn't be able to see the presentation. They wouldn't be able to see the pictures, but they would get a synopsis of, a summary of what we discussed. So it's like it was me and Director Wolverton and
Terry.
No, Terry, were you on there too?
Yeah, facilities.
You were on facilities?
Yeah.
So the 3 of us, I think there was 4 people on there. Charlie was on there. Director Rawhauser was on there. So the 4 of us would come back, and then we would say, is that what you heard? Director Wolverton, yes, that's what I heard. So the other 3 people would acknowledge that that's what the conversation and the information was. So that's how the other board members would get the information.
So from a report at the main
From a
meeting.
report,
Right.
yes, and then other board, like I could speak up and say, that's not what I heard, or I want to add this, or I'm concerned about this. So like I could speak up and say things if I wanted to, which I did on occasion, but those pretty much got worked through in that committee meeting before it got to the committee as a whole.
In my committee, the admin team were really more observers and there to answer questions. They didn't really deliberate or.
Okay.
But I don't know if that was the case.
It was not the case in the facility
And I
committee.
meant like the principals, not Mr. Gunn, like he obviously would have
Yes,
been.
yes.
I meant some of the, because you said there were 7 administrators for each.
Yeah, that's what's
Yeah.
listed here.
Not all 7 of them were actively engaged in the conversation all the time. It was, sort of.
Yeah.
When they were
That's
needed
the same.
to
We would
answer a
have-
question.
We had quite a few administrators that sat in as well and didn't participate.
Yeah.
But we talked about the buses, the bus routes, the vans, the vehicles that would need replaced, if there was an accident where we needed to put bollards, like those. I just felt more informed, and I felt like I could ask more questions.
So, so you're saying with the committee of the whole, what we're losing is the granular detail that would come out in the committee discussion. So that granular detail gets condensed down into a brief report, and I remember them being less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably,
I mean,
probably
depending,
much,
yeah, yeah.
many times less than that. So how did the rest of the board become informed sufficiently about what's going on in order to cast a vote on that? That's my question.
I think there's enough information provided in a report that you can make a decision. And if you if you have a question, you can ask, and then at that point in time, it's answered. I can't be everywhere and do everything, nor do I want to. I got to put trust in what these committees are bringing forward, use my judgment. If I have a question, ask and make a vote. I don't have to be in the granular. That's what they're doing. I think we want to be in the granular on this board, and that's where I feel like we mess up.
Well, most of the school boards in Pennsylvania operate with a committee structure. That's a given. So this one is in the minority. But we were handed that. We certainly have the power to change it. At this point, I'm not arguing for or against. We're empowered as a group of 9 voting members, but with consultation of our 10th member, superintendent, to go back to what we talked about earlier. We're empowered to make whatever decision and set the structure up, because our policy already has a form for that. But they made that decision for a reason. And I'm not entirely sure of the reason. I have my suspicions what the reason
I know
were.
I know the reason.
Yeah, what was
Dr.
it?
Cartwright made the recommendation, and the board went with her recommendation. We didn't deliberate it. We didn't really discuss it. I don't think a lot of us had any idea. Like, we're just like, okay, if that's what Dr. Cartwright says, that's kind of what I said. I was not feeling good about it. But I voted yes to it because she recommended it. So,
Dr. Houck, do you recall why she recommended it?
I do not.
But I think the majority of us want committees. So can we just have you form the committees? And do we need to make a motion right now?
I think we're operating under a past motion. So in order to do that, we would have to rescind that by an action taken by the board with a majority. And we can put that on the agenda, a future agenda, to go, to do that.
well, we didn't rescind it before. We just voted. I don't recall rescinding. You don't have to rescind anything. We just voted to go to a different structure.
Well, I
We don't
mean,
have to vote.
rescind, they might not have that language in the motion, but we would basically be reverting back to existing policy, which already has a committee structure in it.
Well, that's what I requested in my email, that gets put on the agenda to be voted on. So I would like it to be put on the agenda to be voted on next week, to go to committee structure.
Okay, can we do that? Can we do that?
Sure.
Just put it on the agenda.
Yeah,
Okay.
you put it on the agenda, then you guys vote on it. That's the
Even if
process.
it's not on the agenda tonight, we could do it next week.
Yeah,
right?
because all you have to do is give the 24-hour notice that you're going to take action, and then you're giving the public notice that you're making that change.
Okay. Is there
We're having
consent?
a discussion
to-
about it right now, so.
Yeah, is there consent to put that on the agenda?
Yes.
So we have 1, 2, 3, I know 4 members.
Yeah.
5 members?
Yes.
Okay, we'll put it on the agenda. I'll have to remember to do that.
Yeah, I'll maybe just have you help me with the wording of
With
that.
the wording of the motion?
Yep,
Okay.
But
Can work on
we
that.
can certainly do that.
I think it's important to mention, I know it's not passed, but keep in mind that I think it is important to ask the board members their interests, because I know Director
Yes.
Whitmer wanted to be on curriculum. She has her teaching degree. I wanted to be on the finance committee, and we were denied the request.
Yes.
So I was on the facilities, which was cool, because, you know, I have knowledge in that area, so it was okay. But I think, to Carmen's point, it would be nice if we were put on a committee where we had knowledge and interest. I think that would just be helpful and good for our culture.
Yeah, and I would like also, for putting in our, our recommendation, I want to create a committee for extracurricular, sports, music, Skills USA, and like all these planned trips that come up, have the committee or whatever, so that way when it comes here, we
I
can
don't
just.
think it works like that, Director Hogan. You just don't just start creating committees. It's kind of like, I think
Oh.
a board has to talk about, like, if we need an extra committee, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like how many committees we want, but if we decide on just 3, we can include that as part of one of those committees.
Right, that's what I'm
Like
saying.
part of curriculum or something. We can make it like
Oh.
curriculum and co-curricular,
Oh, so you would
extracurricular.
only have at most 3, and then you would have to append
Well,
a
we could do
different
3 or
interest?
4. I think 3 is advantageous because there's 3 board members on each committee. If we go to 4, there's going to be 3 board members on one committee and then 2 on the other ones, which I'm fine with because I trust everybody. And then there's that balance a little bit with 2 people. So that's, do you know what I mean? Like that's.
Yeah, however you want to work it, but I think we
Why
need
don't we
some.
do this? Why don't we work the logistics offline? Because if we go back to committee structure, we already have a current policy that tells us what committees we would.
Yes, that would,
Does that sound?
Sure.
Fine.
and then we can go from there.
Okay. All right.
But I think it's important that we do cover those things, because we've had an issue pop up that we had to discuss, you know?
Yeah, like the music issue could have been handled,
Yeah.
like taken care of like that. If
Right.
we'd had a committee and they could voice
Right.
where we're really headed.
And get questions answered right away. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I know that took a long time, so I apologize.
So this discussion all started over policy
Yes.
005. So if you want to make revisions to that, then we can do that and put it back on first read for next month. But
Yeah.
Maybe we should wait and see how the vote goes and solidify that first, and then.
I think we'll have to take a look at it. This policy, I'm looking at 005 now. Does it have the committee structure in there? It doesn't list the committees as we have it listed in our current policy. I think regardless, we probably need to defer approval of this until after we decide what committees we're going to put in here. Because it doesn't list the committees in here.
There's a blank space for it.
I'm looking,
Page 4 or 5.
I'm on page 3 here, where it starts a section, board committees. Committees shall consist of no more than blank members or whatever. That's not checked. We would have to
Down
make a
toward the
decision
bottom.
about that.
yeah,
I'm
like
on the one-on-one
1,
in here.
2, 3 up, 4 up from the consultants members. I typed that in myself.
Oh, you typed it. I was going to say, I didn't see it in there, so it's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we would have to, on the policy 005, on page number 4, under the section where it says the president may appoint, and it has an X in the box, as soon after the organization meeting is practicable, members of the board to the following committees where they shall serve a term of 1 year. And that blank is where we'd have to enter our committee structure, which would be a change from, if we just put what our current policy says, it's different than what they were doing before. So we probably need to have a discussion about what committees we would want to form, because they have two committees combined on here. We could start with the three that they have and just name them something different. We could do that. So we'll have to come up with another draft and propose it later. All right. We'll have to have some discussion offline about the logistics of moving that forward. Any further discussion about committee structure, policy 005? All right. Any other policies here we want to discuss?
Yeah,
Okay.
policy 610 and 611. Earlier in the week, I had questioned, we had board secretary in under delegation of responsibility in both those policies. We had purchasing agent. I see we changed it to business affairs staff, and I guess my question is, what's that mean? Who all is on the business affairs staff?
I thought, well, originally you guys had discussed business manager, but there is no business manager, so I thought it was supposed to be just the staff in the business office or the superintendent.
Okay, I'm just simply asking though, what's that mean? Is there one person?
No, there's several people in the business office. There's myself, there's Mrs. Danner, we have an accounts receivable, accounts payable, we have several people.
So
That was what I thought.
So roughly 4 people.
Well, there's 5, yeah, there's 5, yeah, so we
Okay.
have an administrative assistant.
All right,
There's 5 too.
that was my only question.
Yeah, so that's what I thought you were looking for, because we talked about it. I mean, we can change it if that's something else you want. I was just trying to
Well,
manage it.
my concern earlier was, we listed people that we didn't have positions.
Right, okay, I was
So I
trying
was
to
trying to get clarification, so we have it defined.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
So, just for clarity, so we added that term business affairs staff. We probably need to just to clean that up and bold that, since that's
Yeah,
added
absolutely.
language on both of those policies. Or we could call it what it's actually called, which is the CFO's office, or the
It is called the Business Affairs Office.
Business Affairs Office?
Department,
Okay.
actually, the Business Affairs Department, that's what's on the website.
So shouldn't that be capitalized then, business affairs?
It can be, sure.
Yeah, I think we should
It's
probably.
debatable.
Yeah.
That is debatable.
Okay. All right, do you have anything else?
No.
Any other policies that anyone would like to discuss about input?
Can I draw your attention just to one of them?
Sure.
That is kind of a significant change. I gotta remember which one it is. Policy 308. There is a lot of bold print in policy 308, so I'm just highlighting it for the board. One of the most important is under delegation of responsibility, where the board authorizes the superintendent to accept employee resignations on behalf of the board. The difference there is, I'm going to have Mr. Pratt kind of weigh in on this, but when is a resignation, quote, official? Is it official when the superintendent accepts it, or does it have to wait until board approval for it to be official? So that clears that language up, and I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, there was nothing definite as to what the definition was, is when, obviously, when someone resigns in between meetings, and a number of districts and have modified that resignations are accepted when it's provided by this, when it's given to the superintendent, so that for a couple of reasons. Number one, as indicated by Dr. Houck earlier, and you two guys taking action in hiring people, that they can go ahead and give notice to their employer that they are leaving, so that it starts the 60-day period, and also it does not have to wait, they do not have to wait until board takes action to accept that resignation for them to move forward in their new job. And also allows the superintendent and administration to post the position sooner rather than waiting for approval.
So this proposal has an exception to that, and that would be the superintendent and assistant superintendent. Their resignations will require board action.
Correct, that's part of their contract as well.
Well, not the assistant, because it's blank. You would have to check that box, right?
Well, that would indicate
We
not all
would
school
have-
dis- not all school districts have assistant superintendents. Since you do have one, you'd have to check that box.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, we'll check it. Check that box.
Okay. So with these revisions to this policy, 308 and 005, and I'm not sure now on the other policies if we made a revision or not, or if bolding, it's de minimis, it's not, it's not a substantive
You're not
revision.
changing the substance of the policy.
So 005 and 308, we would have changes being made to that, right? So that would,
No,
they could
37
still
No,
remain
you
in
just-
first
you just
reading.
check- You just checking the box is not going to be changing the substance of the policy.
Okay, so we're in a planning meeting. Our first reading on any policy could be next week, right? So we could still be in first reading next week
Yeah.
on policies.
Yeah, second reading is next month.
Second reading will be next month pursuant to how you guys have originally
Okay.
done this.
So I'm moving 308 to second reading, but not 005, because you want to discuss the committees further.
Okay.
Did I get that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Once you take action next week to approve the first reading, then you move it to the second in the next month on those except 005.
I mean, 005, we would take off altogether.
So we
Just take it off the agenda
take
altogether.
that off the.
Yeah, because
And then put it back on once
you've
we
made the
vote.
modifications and you're going to talk about it, so you're taking it off and it's going to come back as a first reading again anyway.
Right. So that's.
Same thing with 011, if I'm not mistaken. that you-
011.
You're making modifications to that too. You used to put the word in positively, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it was recommended by one member. The, I
Well,
don't,
again, depending on what action you take next week.
yeah, so, but if we make changes to that, we could still be in first reading next
Correct.
week. Right. All right.
It doesn't delay it.
Okay, so I'm taking 005 off of, I keep it on policies, for first reading. I don't have to change anything because they're not voting on those.
You're not, but
Yeah, so,
Thank you, yeah, I got it.
right. So we're cleaned up on the logistics of that. Okay, very
Glad
good.
you do.
All right, what's that?
She said she has it, and I'm like, I'm glad you do.
Got it.
Okay, so let's go back to our agenda.
But then I didn't.
Any further discussion on policies first reading? All right, very well. This takes us to our public comment period, the second public comment period. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. I'll try to keep a closer watch on the clock. I was so interested in taking notes that I let the clock go by on one participant. I'll try to be more diligent on that next time.
My name is Amy Kraus, and I'm going to cede my 2 minutes to Spring.
Thank you.
Just procedurally, there's no
Yes.
need to that. A person that speaks the first time can speak again second time. That's,
I want to speak for 4 minutes this time.
uh,
She can cede me her minutes. We used to do it all the time on the Yale School Board.
see, I don't think there's any provision in our policy to cede time to another individual.
I think it specifically states that too.
Yeah. So you have 2 minutes. to
Okay,
present.
you're starting over.
All right, reset the clock. There you have it.
Thanks.
Please
Um,
state your name again for the
Sure.
record.
Spring Davidson, and I signed in. 2 things. First of all, democracy is ugly. It's hard. And when you argue about stuff in public, it gets icky. And that's what you're called to do as board members. So I'm going to ask you to not shy away from doing that. That's your job. That's what you're here to do. And when I hear comments, especially from the board president, that says we're going to take it offline, that's against the law in Pennsylvania. Everything has to be done in the Sunshine Act out in the open. It's why we have a Sunshine Act. And so you can't take things offline. And we heard from one of the public persons who spoke, one of the women who spoke, that the solar project was discussed in executive session. That is also against the law. That is not one of the 7 things you can do in an executive session. So if you guys want to be hauled into court, I would suggest you keep doing it. But if you don't, stop immediately, because it is not okay and it's against the law. Executive sessions are confidential, and President Connolly kind of gave all of us in the audience the stink eye about that, but it's you who are blabbing about the executive committee, not the public. So if he wants to give the stink eye, he needs to look inside himself and at the other 8 of you or 9 of you and do that. But we don't know what it is because we're not allowed to be there. But I will tell you what you can and can't do, because I too can read, and it's right in the law what you can and can't talk about. And solar projects are not one of those things, period. Director Connolly also said that solar panels don't affect student achievement. Solar panels affect money. Money affects student achievement. Always, always, always. That's what we're talking about here, money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Davison. Anyone else?
Kara Hetrick, I would just like to say that I'm disappointed we didn't hear anything about the superintendent search, not to beat a dead horse. And we also really didn't talk about students much at all. I understand we've talked about business and money and taxes, that's all part of it. But we really didn't talk about the students at all. And I know there's a lot of people watching at home who also hear what you're talking about, so they may not be in this room. I think talking about the students is always a positive thing. And I would just like to give a shout out to our high school swim team. They had a trip this weekend that was amazing up on Clearfield. So talking about field trips and the things that you approve. We don't always talk about enough positive things, so I do want to end on a positive message about the students. I thought the students' behavior was excellent. I thought the coaches and the staff did a great job organizing. I've never had so many messages ahead of time about what the plan was and an agenda with times. So I give a shout out to everyone that planned that, and the students were such a great representation of this district. And it was just a real great moment for our school. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hetrick. Anyone else?
Chris Rotolo.
Address?
2561
Okay.
Anita Drive.
All right, thank you.
I really didn't have any prepared comments tonight. We had an email dialogue with President Connolly and myself in September saying that September would be when we start talking about budget. Maybe we need committees to get to the nitty-gritty. It's January. I haven't heard anything other than turning down solar, anything at all to do with budget and how we're going to deal with that. It's the elephant in the room, and it's not being discussed at all. And of course, it is concerning to, I'm sure, every administrator, which passes on to every teacher, which passes on to every student. So if that's truly our focus, I think we need to refocus and let them know that they're going to be here and they're going to be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Doug McGurn, I signed in up front. I think we had a breakthrough tonight. Director Meese and Director Hogan, thank you for bringing back the committees, bringing it up for suggestion to add them back. I think what's happened this last year is not working. Committees give accountability and ownership. You go to the committees and you discuss, you're prepared, and then you come to the meeting. What we've seen over the last few months, you come to the board meeting, but nobody's prepared. The solar discussion's been going on for 2 months. We had the details, but when it came up tonight, nobody was prepared to talk about it. But I think if you go into committee, you discuss it, you present, the board will be able to make a more informed decision. Director Whitmer, I hope you can find a committee that you're passionate about. I'm sorry that happened to you last time, but obviously you've been on the board, you've been in some uncomfortable discussions about budget, but if there's something you're passionate about, like curriculum, you can bring great input into this district. I think I speak for the public. We're concerned because we hear the same things being discussed at the meetings, but then it gets kicked down the road to the next meeting. I mean, the solar panel discussion, the deadline was the end of the month, but we were no further along than we were 2 months ago. And that's just not acceptable. You know, and I heard the word trust. I mean, football teams, they have a D coach, an O coach, a receivers coach, a wide receiver coach, a running back coach. You have a nutritionist, you have a strength coach. If they don't work together, the team doesn't succeed. So you have to have trust in each other and you have to prepare. And when you come here, that's when you present and then you can make an informed decision. And then President Connolly, I mean, it's your group. So you're overseeing all of this and making it work cohesively. It hasn't worked that way over the last year, and I really hope that you go in that direction and you have committees. And I know you have Director Emig, who's been on this board for years. You have his support, as well as Director Wolverton, and I respect their opinions, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGurn. Anyone else?
Hi, Caitlin Rhodes. I signed in on the sheet. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the committees. When I was a teacher in the district, I attended the committee meetings, the board committee meetings, as I worked on my administrative certificate for like a period of over a year. I thought that the discussions were much more knowledgeable and just allowed for greater depth into topics. As a parent now, I would rather know that thorough discussion is happening in committee and that informed decisions and recommendations are being brought to the board from these committees. Also, another comment was made that board members wanting quicker meetings indicates that they don't care about their role. And I just would want to say to be careful about making that generalization. I think there's a difference between wanting just to get out of here, but I think what some of the board members are more indicating is having more effective meetings, like as Dr. Mee said, that lead to results or decisions or next steps. And lastly, I'd like to speak again in support of Dr. Houck for superintendent. Just sitting here tonight, again, she continues to demonstrate her ability to lead the district in an effective and positive way. And last, as Kara just said, I want to end on a positive and focus on our kids. I just can't say enough of good things about the staff at Dover Elementary. My daughter's a car rider, just the 3 teachers who are out there every day when it's been like 10 degrees in the morning, greeting her, smiling, getting her into the building. She's having trouble transitioning, separating from me. She's crying most days. They hug her, they talk to her, they get her in the building. Her teacher, her reading specialist team, and the principal, I send her to each day knowing she's safe and held to high expectations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rhodes. Anyone else? All right, public comment period is closed. This takes us to comments and observations from the board. I'll start on this side, Director Hogan.
I really don't have anything, except I do not recall having an executive session on solar panels, because I would have been all over that.
Okay.
I don't have
Dr.
anything,
Mellon.
thank you.
Dr.
Nothing
Emig?
from me.
Dr. Kindig?
I'd just like to point out to the board and ask for some consideration. If you looked at the audit that was presented, we took in roughly $900,000 more money, more income in the earned income tax than we projected, budgeted for. If we were to raise the earned income tax by 0.2%, generates all but $1.5 million of income. Now, the way the law is written, we'd have to reduce property tax by that amount. So it would be a break even the first year. But I again come back to this board and say, wages are jumping. This is a way to get more income for this district. We sit here and we talk about, we need more income, we need more income. How can we get more income? For me, for several years now, it's been pretty clear, and I know I'm been a lone voice on it, and if push comes to shove, I'll continue to be the lone voice. But we're looking at a 0.2% on the earned income tax generates all but $1.5 million. That is substantial in our budget. So I think I'd like to ask for some support from other board members in a future meeting.
What is it at now? Like what percent are we at? You said 2% increase. What are we at now?
We are at,
1.5.
in York County, we get 0.5% by York County. 20 years ago, I don't know what, don't hold me to that, but it's somewhere back then, the district voted to put it to a vote of the taxpayers in an election, and the taxpayers voted to increase the earned income tax by another 0.4%. So we are collecting 0.9% in earned income tax, whereas many districts in York County are collecting 0.5% or maybe 7%, 0.7%. Okay, so we are probably one of the highest on the earned income tax in York County. However, our conversation has been forever, we don't have the business in our township, in our district, to generate the property tax that we need. So this is an avenue the state has given districts the option of doing this. And for me, I disagree with property taxes because unfair as you get. You've got widows and widowers out there on Social Security, that's all they're getting for income, and they're making a decision. I buy my prescription drugs or I pay my property taxes. We've had people come to the meeting last budget discussion and said, if it means a better education for my kids, go ahead and raise my taxes. Many of those people are probably earning very good salaries. And this earned income tax is based on your earned income. For me, you can't get a fairer tax than taxing earned income. If you're earning it, you're paying tax on it. If you're not earning it, you pay very little or no tax on it. Property taxes are based on a decision you might have made. I've had my home for 50-some years now in Dover. It's based on the value. Now, many of you know roughly where I live. I'm not in a high-priced home. So this isn't a proposal by me to benefit me. But I am concerned about the widows and the widowers in this district that are struggling to pay property taxes. And as President Conley had shared, some point in time, we're going to be faced with the unfortunate decision to have to raise taxes to get more income to operate this district. And so I'm simply proposing to this board, as one member, saying, some point I'd like to have this board take a look at this earned income tax. We'd have to set up a commission, and they'd have to go through whatever, and then if they decide that it's the way to go, it'd come back to the board would have to approve it, then it gets put on the ballot for the municipal election, and ultimately, the taxpayers would make the decision. So it kind of takes it out of our hands. We simply are the means to get it on the ballot, and then the taxpayers decide. And if the taxpayers say, nope, I'd rather pay higher property taxes than more earned income tax, okay, they made the decision. But I am a little frustrated. I sit here and hear every so often, we need to get more income, we need to get more income, we need to get more revenue, and we don't want to discuss this.
I'm sorry, Craig, Director Kindig, I personally would never support an increase of any tax that we've already gotten to such a high threshold on, especially because this just goes back to a conversation I had with the township building on the mercantile tax, which is grandfathered in, and they don't want to get rid of it because they're benefiting from it to the point of being able to have some cash flow that they like having on the side. But it's hurting us. It's an obstacle for business to be brought into this community. It could be among many obstacles, but that's a big obstacle. You know, basically says to businesses, you are privileged to work here, so we're going to tax you. It's a really confusing message, so I've asked to have them look at it multiple times. Why don't you consider getting rid of this tax? There's only about 10 municipalities in all of York County that still hold on to this tax, and we're one of them. And the response I got was, well, if I get rid of that tax, well, what other tax could I impose to make up for that money I'm getting? And I thought to myself, you're not getting it, okay? Taxes are obstacles to people, and we need to think outside the box for revenue. I don't agree with taxing more for the sake of trying to find solutions to things, and so I just think that's the wrong approach to bringing in revenue. So that's why I don't like the idea of it.
Okay. So just a reminder, we're on board member comments, so we're not debating issues. So you finished?
I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
concur with Director Hogan. There was no solar panel executive session. We are very versed on the Sunshine Law. I went through a law training course just as I was getting elected. We're very careful with that. And so on to happier news. I always do like, if you've been paying attention, I always do have something great to say about the students as we go around here at the end. I did attend the Winter Pops concert. That was amazing. It was as good as any professional concert you could buy a ticket to. My favorites were the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and then that final song was a very wintry, Christmassy, Jesus-filled song. It was a great, positive song to end on. So great job to the band, and Mr. G, keep up the good work.
Very good. Director Meese?
All right. Congratulations to Mrs. Weaver's team. That's amazing. Great job. Also, on our agenda is the field trip for District 7 band, and there's 2 students going. So I just wanted to shout out those 2 students. I don't know their names, but that's pretty cool to be able to go to districts. So I wish them luck with that. Along those lines too, jazz choir district tryouts are Friday. So the high school actually doesn't have school, so the kids are going in when they don't have school for tryouts. So good job, kids. Going in on your day off. I wanted to ask if anybody knew where we do stand with the facility studies. Mrs. Weaver, you alluded to it a little bit. Like what's the deadline for the RFPs?
28th, we're coming back to 28th.
January 28th?
Yes.
And then do those get brought to the board to look at, or do you guys, does Mr. Fluke kind of look through them and
We're
pick?
gonna vet, we'll vet them.
You'll
and
vet
then-
them?
And then we'll bring everything to the board.
And how many RFPs do we receive so far?
We have not received any. Typically, you don't receive
Till
them
then?
right before.
Yeah, but we had a lot of people, we had a
We
lot of
had a really fantastic turnout.
turnout. That's
Yes, we
good.
did.
Okay, cool. And then can you give a quick rundown of the budget timeline? There were a couple questions about that, so,
Yes, the first budget presentation is going to be next Tuesday.
okay,
It will be a very, very long one.
okay,
It is 40 slides
40 slides.
with a lot of detail.
Okay. But we'll be able to look at that ahead of time,
Yes,
so make sure
yes,
we
just
have our
make
questions.
Sure you eat up before you get here.
Okay, eat your Wheaties. All right. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Director Whitmer?
I just first want to ask, are you going to address any of the comments made during public comment?
Probably not. You want to address it?
I just want to, in regards to the superintendent search, since Ms. Hetrick has brought it up, I just want to say that we really didn't start until like later in the fall. I felt that it's been a challenging process for numerous reasons, but I think it's the most important decision we can make, and so taking our time in it, I think, makes sense. And in regards to community involvement, there were different opportunities from the onset. And however that played out with the unfortunate part of the parents in the community being involved, I'm not going to apologize for that. I don't know what that was supposed to look like. We didn't really get briefed on that. So to take responsibility for that, I don't know. I just want to say that we did get a decent amount of input from at the early onset and then at the end. And so I feel like there's been plenty of deliberation. Our whole month of December was full of deliberation about this. So we are sorting through the details to make the best possible decision we can make. And I want to also echo what Ms. Hetrick said in regards to the invitational this past weekend. It was really fun to just watch the kids represent our school in a way, meet like that, and interact with other students and just smile and have a good time together. They were bonding, and tonight they had a great meet at Central. I believe they won, both boys and girls, so they did great. And so that's the only sport I've been kind of following. It's a lot, but I feel like there's probably so much more that can be shared with us too on how things are going in the community, as far as people who are volunteering on the inside, and maybe some eyes that have seen some things that we haven't been able to see. It'd be nice to hear those positive comments at the board meetings instead of all the criticism and assumptions of things. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Dr. Wolford?
Yeah. Been kind of quiet because getting over bronchitis and stuff at this point, but I want to emphasize the idea. I too believe the committee should be brought back. I'd like to see a finance committee consisting of myself, Mrs. Meese, Mr. Kindig. I think there's 3 individuals here that are pretty strong in regards to the financing, for the backgrounds that we have and what we foresee as a 3 to 5 year rolling plan for this district. And it needs to be laid out and stop. We need to stop talking about it and get in there and actually take a look at the things. And other than that, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Howe?
I don't have anything. I give a board report next week, so you'll get all my information then.
Very good. The only thing I will address in regards to the comments, there is a briefing on the Dover District website that was updated on January 7th for the superintendent search. It's not pasted on there, it's an attachment this time. There was a link put on there that pops it up. So for those of you that missed that, it's there. I don't have any other comments for the night. Do you have anything for us, Mr. Pratt?
Nothing that we can't discuss next week.
Very good. All right. For our future meetings, we have a meeting next Tuesday night, which is January the 21st, which will be our business meeting, where we will address and take action on the items that were discussed tonight. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Director Emig moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Meese seconds the motion. Is there any objection? Hearing none? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. But now that I've said that, we have an executive session to follow, so I'd ask the public if they'd please clear the room.